The final hearing before this commission is appealable to the Chancery Court of Davidson County or the Circuit Court of Davidson County via statutory writ of certiorari. You are advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari to the specific decision of the Historic Zoning Commission. Another preamble that we have started to recite is the clarification of a preservation permit, just to be really, really clear. If you are approved for a preservation permit today, and you are not the contractor, please know that it is your responsibility to make sure that the contractor has a copy of the preservation permit before beginning work. The preservation permit includes items that require final approval and inspection requirements. The final drawings are part of the preservation permit. Following the preservation permit will save you time and money, as enforcement of violations can sometimes be a lengthy and expensive process. The preservation permit is not a building permit. No work can begin without the appropriate review and approval by the Metropolitan Department of Codes Administration. Also, a little bit of housekeeping a bit. If you are the applicant, please identify yourself and your connection to the project. Say you're the architect or the contractor or designer. And also, when they do public speaking, which we know that there are people in our room at the moment, please again, identify yourself and your connection to the specific project. Okay? Number one on the agenda, and welcome to June 18, 2024, Metro Historic Zoning Commission, if I didn't say that at the beginning. Number one of our agenda to the commissioners is adoption of May 15, 2024 minutes. Are there any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
Vice Chair has made motion, second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor? Okay, we have 4 concurring votes, so that passes. Ms. Ziegler, is there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, there are 5 projects that have requested to come off for various reasons. Number 8, 1508 Garland is a request to defer. Number 11, 1512 Gale Lane, a request to defer. Number 14, 2007 20th Avenue South, it was revised for an administrative permit. Number 18, 4400 Utah Avenue, the notification requirements were not met. Number 21, 716 Boscobel Street, notification requirements were not met. So that's projects number 8, 11, 14, 18, and 21.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda with the revisions? Commissioner Mayhall has made the motion. Second by Vice Chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, there's 4 concurring votes, and that passes. Thank you. And are there any council members here today? Okay, we just want to acknowledge them for all their work as well. Consent agenda? Melissa, don't forget to turn on your mic.
All right. Items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the public or the commission requests that the items be removed from the consent agenda. If there is a case on the consent agenda that you are in opposition to, please raise your hand when the item is called. Cases pulled from the consent agenda will be heard at the end of the agenda. Again, please raise your hand if you are in opposition to any of the following items. And of course, I do not have sorry, had no way to advance the slides. All right, so the first on the agenda are the administrative permits issued for the prior month. There were 40 of those. 1015 Chickamauga Avenue, new construction of an addition. 943 Seymour Avenue, new construction of an addition with partial demolition. 203 Chapel Avenue, new construction of an addition. 1700 Fatherland Street, new construction of an addition. 1228 McChesney Avenue, new construction of an outbuilding, or an addition to an outbuilding. 511 Fairfax Avenue, new construction of an addition. 1106 Halcyon Avenue, new construction of an addition and an outbuilding. 2223 30th Avenue South, partial demolition. 120 3rd Avenue South, new construction alteration. 315 North Wilson Boulevard, an outbuilding revision. And just a note on this application, the height of the outbuilding will be 19 feet 6 inches, but will still be no taller than the house. And staff recommends approval. Oh, sorry. Actually, we'll go back through them. So we're going to read through them one more time, just in case anyone would like the items removed. Please raise your hand.
Melissa, also, just to be sure, we're really clear that if you want to pull any of these out, this is the time to speak now or forever hold your peace.
Okay. So 1015 Chickamauga Avenue, an addition. 943 Seymour Avenue, an addition and partial demolition. 203 Chapel Avenue, an addition. 1700 Fatherland Street, an addition. 1228 McChesney Avenue, an addition to an outbuilding. 511 Fairfax Avenue, an addition. 1106 Halcyon Avenue, an addition and an outbuilding. 2223 30th Avenue South, partial demolition. 120 3rd Avenue South, alteration. 315 North Wilson Boulevard, a revision to a previously permitted outbuilding. All right. Staff recommends approval of each of these items with the applicable conditions set forth in their individual staff recommendations, finding that the applications can meet the design guidelines of their respective overlays.
Thank you, Melissa. Any questions, commissioners? Or a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Vice Chair?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, seeing none opposed, 4 concurring votes passes. Thank you.
Next up is a revision of design guidelines for Richland West End. And I'm sure many of you, most of you will remember that in 2021, you approved some consolidated design guidelines for most of the neighborhood conservation zoning overlays. 3 of those neighborhoods were left out because the neighborhood wanted to be left out, and that was Richland West End, Belmont Hillsborough, and Hillsborough West End. But Richland West End now is asking to be included in the consolidated, so to adopt that for their neighborhood, as well as some additional guidance that would be in their specific chapter. Most of it is related to outbuildings. One of those is regarding the massing and scale. So the Richland West End chapter would add the additional condition that when a project meets all of the existing conditions for side additions, that it would be only allowed on the street side of the lot. So there's already a bunch of conditions that allow for side additions, and they're going to add to that if it meets all those others, then it can only be on the street side. The guidelines propose that the outbuildings only be 23 feet tall. Right now, the cap in the consolidated is 25. They want to cap it at 23. They're proposing a different rear setback, and they're going to base that based on the height of the outbuilding. So if the outbuilding is 15 feet or less, it can be 5 feet from the rear setback. If it's greater than that, it would need to be 10 feet from the rear setback. And the consolidated guidelines allow for balconies on outbuildings in certain conditions. And so this proposal, again, just for their chapter, would be an additional condition that where a balcony meets those guidelines, that the balcony would also need to be facing the primary building. So not facing the alley, not facing the sides, but facing the primary building. So since you've already approved the existing consolidated guidelines, we recommend that they be pulled over to apply to Richland West End with those revisions that would be in their chapter specifically. And there are several members of the neighborhood here ready to speak, but did you have any questions for me before you open your public hearing?
I've got one. Did you say an outbuilding needed to be facing the street?
That a side addition, is that the part where you're asking about?
Oh, is it side
If a side addition meets all of the existing
Okay,
allowances for side additions, it would also need to be on the street side.
okay,
Is that the one?
yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, we're going to recuse myself from this issue. Thank you.
Okay, so duly noted, Vice Chair. Anyone else? I kind of have one, and it has to do with the setbacks in the rear. You know, most of the time, we do have the ability to change those setbacks. With them changing their requirement or guidelines, does that affect any of our decisions for any other, if it's site-specific? I hope I'm making myself clear.
I think you are. There are guidelines, and it is up to you to interpret them based on every particular case that comes before you and the existing conditions of that lot and that site. So it doesn't preclude you from making the decisions you make every month, but it is the first place to start.
On the street side addition, does that mean no additions to any lots that aren't corner lots?
Correct. Side additions, you can still have an addition, just not a side addition.
Clarify the side addition, since that has been brought up. Side addition would be
Attached to the side of an existing building,
like a
like a
porch or portiere,
porch,
anything.
any kind of side addition on the side of a building.
Straight back additions, same rules.
Yes. And by same rules, I mean the rules that already exist.
Correct.
Yes.
I have a question. On the side addition, I'm getting a scenario here. What if the building itself is not to the setback on the side? Does it still eliminate all side additions?
I'm sorry, I'd say that one more time.
Okay, so you want to put a side addition on a house, but the side of the house is not to the setback line. It is off the setback line.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Okay. I got a building setback. I've got a side building setback line, but the house, it does not go all the way to the setback line. You still cannot put a side addition.
That's right. The
Okay.
Side additions would only be allowed on a corner lot. If they meet all the other requirements, then they would also need to be on the street-facing side.
Okay, regardless of where the setback is.
And if it's encroaching into the setback, then that would be something that you would look at.
Okay, yeah, I'm going the other direction so that the house is clear of the setback, say 10 feet, but you still cannot put a side addition on there. I'm not sure you'd ever run into that situation, but just want to be clear.
I think it's also just good to consider that, we do review site specifics, so this is great to go by, as Robin said. However, we still have commission approval for each site that comes before us. And depending on what that setback is, it may change. So does that sound like a good plan? All right, anybody else have any questions? Okay, since we only have 4 concurring votes, I will need to vote. Legal? Yes, we will. We do have a,
That is correct. You will need to
Okay,
go, but
just
you have to open
to make
public
sure.
hearing.
yes, I will. Thank you for the reminder. Also, I guess I want to make sure that there's no counselor here. Did we get any public comment from any of your council people?
We have not.
Okay. I just want to make sure. All right. We'll open public hearing.
Okay, sorry. My name's Jim Kelly. I'm going to speak on behalf of the Neighborhood Association. I've lived in the Richland neighborhood for over 35 years, and I was on the original committee back 30 years ago when we got the overlay and drafted the existing guidelines. When we started that process, we spent a long time, over a year, with the neighborhood, getting consensus that these guidelines be adopted and agreeing to what was in the original ones. We had over 70% of our homeowners vote affirmatively for the guidelines and the overlay. We had under 5 people vote no, and the rest didn't vote, but I guess in today's politics, that kind of a turnout is a great measure of how popular it was. And the guidelines have worked well over the last 30 years. We haven't been before you all too much, fighting with developers and neighbors and such. Maybe the biggest thing that's happened in that 30-year period was that Mike Ford bought the Free Will Baptist Bible College and built 22 single-family houses on Richland. And I don't think you all ever heard anything about it other than just approving the plans, because he worked with the staff, he worked with the neighborhood association, and we have now, instead of a college campus in the middle of our neighborhood, 22 new neighbors. My pride of authorship notwithstanding, over 30 years, we've realized that we could have said things better in the guidelines, and we probably didn't think of everything. And so a couple of years ago, when the staff approached us about having the consolidated guidelines extend to our neighborhood, at first we said no, but then we read and compared to what was in the consolidated guidelines versus what we had and said, there's almost a complete overlap now. We have some things that are peculiar to our neighborhood. So we said, well, let's try it. We'll take the basic guidelines and then we'll have our own chapter. If you actually put the current document together, it's not very different from the one we've operated under for 30 years. I view it as more a change in form than in substance. And as Ms. Ziegler said, there are a few things that we felt, because of our neighborhood, are more appropriate to put in this additional chapter. And so we have. And other neighborhood folks are going to tell you about what the process we went through, because just like 30 years ago, we want to make sure that this is something that's accepted within the neighborhood. It makes no sense to have something that's a top-down dictate. We need to have the neighborhood and the neighbors really think this is the best thing for all of us, because we have, in my case, I've been over 30 years and don't think I'll leave until I have to be taken away, but we've got constant influx of new neighbors. They love living there, and we think this is one of the reasons it makes our neighborhood so good. So with that, I would appreciate you all approving this. I hope maybe I'm around 30 years from now, we'll come back and tinker with them again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Hello, my name is Michelle Gannon. I live at 3519 Central Avenue, and I'm the co-chair of RINWA's Historic Preservation and Zoning Committee. The 12-member committee is representative of our neighborhood, including young families and retirees, people who have lived here for years, and newbies like me. 2 years. In January 2022, the committee agreed to explore the idea of updating our design guidelines only if there was neighborhood consensus for a potential change. We also committed to a transparent, open, inclusive process and came up with a plan that is included in both your staff report and the letter you received from our board. The outreach took more than a year. You've got all the specifics about newsletter articles and community meetings and updates that were provided to the board and the community. But basically, effective engagement is not achieved simply by broadcasting information. It is only truly successful with partnership and collaboration. The issues that are included in the REMA chapter that were decided upon and affirmed by both the board and residents who attended the well-publicized community meetings are what you see before you today. The language was refined several times to incorporate residents' desires, and HCC staff participated along the way completely. So I'm confident that we achieved the consensus that we were looking for and hoping for. You've received at least 20 letters of support from the neighborhood, and we've got 7 of us are here today with another 2 who are probably going to be after you've voted. But we would just thank you for considering an update to the guidelines, which we have collectively endorsed so that they can serve us well into the future as they have in the past.
Thank you.
Actually, you guys get, since you're applicants, you get 10 minutes, so I'll add another 5. I just wasn't aware of it.
I won't take that long, I promise. My name is Michael Linseth. I'm at 3533 Richland Avenue, and I'm the Richland West End Neighborhood Association president for the last 8 years. I did want to read, because Mrs. Gadd, she could not come, Councilmember Gadd, because she had Metro Council, but is it okay if I read an email that she sent? Okay. It's to Michelle. I'm thankful for you and your entire committee of the entire committee of the Neighborhood Association who has put so much time and diligence into this. Tomorrow's Metro Council's meeting, and because we are considering the budget, I have meetings concerning the budget, substitute budget, and the transient referendum, which will be on the calendar for the first reading throughout the afternoon. At this time, I will not be able to join in person for the meeting. I have not received any emails or opposition to the proposed guidelines. I'm sorry and cannot be there tomorrow. So, and I just want to comment, with Michelle and what Jim said, the last 18 months, we put a lot of heavy lifting into this, especially the committee, with the newsletters, with community meetings, with Ms. Ziegler. I've offered those that were against it or have thought to come to my house to discuss it. And so I hope that this board commission passes the resolution. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Please come forward if you do. We do appreciate you all being here, neighborhood. Okay, we'll close public hearing. And have any comments? Okay, I'll make a comment then. Until you all can as well. So I'd like to hear from each of you because this is actually a recommendation to the council. So the staff has recommended that, and because they have approved, reviewed all their guidelines and how it actually updates their guidelines. So is that right? We would, if we recommend this then goes to, no?
No, this is not a
Okay.
recommendation. This is a final decision to revise the guidelines.
All right, so it doesn't go to council.
It does not.
All right. Thank you for that clarity. It does take a lot of efforts and hours of a neighborhood to create their own guidelines and also to update. And we know and want to acknowledge the work that you have put into it. And also, it does take your neighborhood captains to go door to door. So it is a process, but also for public hearing when other neighborhoods want to do that, you're an example. So we just want to kudos to you all for that. Any other comments, commissioners? Or a vote?
I think there were some compelling arguments. It looks like it was very well researched, very well communicated to your neighbors, and I see no reason whatsoever not to approve this. So with that statement, go ahead. I will make a motion that we approve. Okay.
Commissioner Cashman has made a motion to approve the recommendation.
Well, I just want to say that before I second this, because I will, is that I love seeing Richland West End come before us. Y'all are always on top of things and care about your neighborhood, and it means a lot to us to see that level of engagement. So I'm happy to second Commissioner Cashin's motion.
Okay. Since we are four, we need 4 concurring votes. I will also have to say approve. So all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Raise your hand. I see none opposing, so 4 concurring votes have passed this recommendation. Legal, are we on board?
Yes, that's all correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. And you can hang around if you want, but thank you again. Appreciate it.
If you'd like, I can talk through the hearing process. I realize I didn't do that in advance, so the guidelines are a little bit different. So this is just a reminder about the presentation and hearing process for the Historic Zoning Commission under Rule 6G. And as you just heard, first staff presents a summary of the project and its recommendation. And then the applicant, including all members of their team, may present for up to 10 minutes. They may ask to save 2 minutes of this time for rebuttal if there is public comment. After the applicants present, there is public comment. Each member of the public has up to 2 minutes to speak, although groups such as neighborhood groups may speak for up to 5 minutes if they've asked in advance. The commission may ask follow-up questions of any presenter or member of the public. The response times for these questions do not count against the time allotments. Once the public hearing is closed, applicants and members of the public cannot initiate exchanges during the deliberation period without an invitation from the commission to speak. Thank you.
And I'd like to introduce you to a new face, Mackenzie. She has been interning with us this summer, and she did the research, and, well, the foundation really did all of their research, but she compiled all of that and put together the staff report for you.
Welcome, Mackenzie.
Hello, thank you for having me. Okay, cool, the clicker works exactly as I hoped.
Just make sure you've got the mic near you because it's yet to be clear. Thank you.
All right, so this is the Dr. George W. Hubbard House at 1109 First Avenue South. It is significant primarily for its relation to George W. Hubbard, for whom it is named. He was the first president of Meharry Medical College here in Nashville. It was originally separated from its parent college in 1916, and so Dr. Hubbard became the first president, and he served until 1921 when his students and former students raised $17,000 to build the house as a retirement home for him. Meharry Medical College is notable for being the first university in the South dedicated primarily to educating Black medical professionals. So Hubbard is considered kind of a pioneer in advancing Black enfranchisement in the early 20th century. It was also built by Moses McKissick III, a Black architect in Nashville, who is notable for having built several university buildings around Nashville. It's characteristic of the four square style in that it has a boxy framework. There are rooms inside that are maximized by separation into 4 rooms per floor. It also has a hipped roof with a dormer window and an extended front porch. You can't see it in these pictures, but there is an addition to the side where they had a side porch, and then they covered that up as well. So that was a later addition, but it's still there. So George Hubbard died in 1924, so he only got to live in the house for 3 years. But it was then taken up by the C. Hubbard United Methodist Church, and they used it as a parsonage for several years. It's no longer inhabited, but it does still retain a lot of the original features, which make it, architecturally, historically significant, and then also significant for its connection to a historical figure, George Hubbard, and its connection to Meharry Medical College, which was an important place in Nashville for civil rights. Then I would like to add that Council Member Vo has sent in a letter of support for this, so thank you to Council Member Vo. And then we do recommend that that we approve 1109 First Avenue South as a historic landmark, finding it to meet 1736-120, B 1, 2, and 5. And that is everything I have. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
There's a second slide. Hold on. Yes, that's the staff recommendation.
Yeah, that's the full recommendation.
Okay.
Now, this one does, the overlay itself does go to council. Previously, we were only looking at design guidelines. Here, we're looking at design guidelines and a new overlay. The overlay is a recommendation to council. The design guidelines, you did make a decision on.
Okay. Open public hearing.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert Churchwell Jr. I'm the president of Friends of Hubbard House. As she mentioned in her presentation, the Hubbard House was and is currently owned by CW United Methodist Church. But we decided to start our own 501(c)(3). We are certified with the state of Tennessee and also with the federal government. The purpose of our Friends of Hubbard House is to raise funds for the restoration of this edifice so it will be used as a medical, dental, and mental health and also student tutorial facility in South Nashville. There's a great need for this, and of course, South Nashville now is in a crux of being changed. Many things are coming into South Nashville, but we wanted to be the forefront of helping to sustain and also stabilize, again, providing those services for the residents for the Trumbull Bottom and South Nashville area. So our board is excited about this opportunity to have as an historic landmark. It is currently on the federal register and also the state register too as a historic edifice. We do have partnership with Meharry Medical College, and they will be the ones provide the medical, dental, and medical, dental, and other services in reference to the medical part for that area. So, again, we appreciate the help of our great historic commission here, and also appreciate you all considering us being designated as this historic landmark. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Churchwell. Do you have any
I'm going to leave that on. I'm not going to touch that.
Might be. We will keep that going. I haven't closed public hearing, but did you want to say anything? Okay. Anyone else? Comments? All right. We'll close public hearing, and commissioners will discuss and have comments.
It is so exciting to see this evolution of this house, and so exciting to hear Ms. Churchwell talk about the plans for it. It'll be a wonderful addition to the neighborhood and provide great services. We obviously don't rule on uses, but I think that's sort of icing on the cake. We're delighted that this house will see the additional protection, and I defer to my other, but we'll be glad to make a motion if needed. So.
I just commend everyone who worked on this. I think it's a magnificent structure, and I'm so pleased it's having a new life. So, with that being said, I move that we approve the historic landmark overlay for 1109 First Avenue South.
There's a motion, but I also want to make a comment. Will somebody second the motion?
Second.
Okay, second by Vice Chair. Just to be clear, this property is also on the National Register? And the other one that Mr. Churchwell commented, no other overlay? Just to be sure.
The other building?
No, this building. So it's under the National Registry. I think
Yes.
you mentioned something else, but
No, state.
The state, okay. Very good. So we've got some good protection on this property, and we will watch it well. So thank you again. All right, there's a motion by Beth Cashin and a second by the Vice Chair. All in favor of the motion? Okay. That is 4 concurring votes, so this recommendation is highly recommended and approved. Thank you.
Okay, next up is 1115 Granada Avenue. It's a circa 1926 framed craftsman bungalow. The address first appears in the 1926 directory. The house contributes to the historic character of the Eastwood Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. The historic house's materials and window configurations were altered sometime between 1969 and 2007. This 1969 property assessor photo shows the historic wood siding and window configuration, which is different than what is in the 2007 Google Street View. The current owner purchased the property in November 2022, according to the property assessor website, and performed work without preservation permit or permits from codes. The work that took place that requires a preservation permit included alteration of window and door openings, siding removal, and enlargement of a rear dormer. I'm going to start with the rear dormer. Sometime after March 2023, the rear shed dormer was extended and its roof form changed from a shed to a gable. Since the dormer is inset more than 2 feet from the sidewalls of the historic house, staff finds that the alteration to the dormer meets the design guidelines. Staff does note, however, when material is installed that the material should be a fiber cement or wood siding with a maximum reveal of 7 inches. And that the windows that are in the dormer be replaced with windows that meet MHCC's standards for windows. The applicant also altered window openings on the front and side facades, which is considered partial demolition. On the front facade, ground floor, the applicant changed the single window openings into paired window openings. Staff finds that the new openings do meet the design guidelines because they are replicating a historic condition seen in the 1969 property assessor photo. In comparing the 2007 Google Street View image and the 2024 photos, it is evident, though, that the windows in the front dormer were shortened. Staff finds that the shorter dormer openings are not appropriate, as historically, dormers were almost all glazing, like what is seen in the 1969 photo. Staff is recommending that the front dormer windows, that the openings be re-enlarged to either match what was there previously, as 2019 or so, or we would prefer to what's seen in the 1969 image. On the left side facade, all of the former window openings and door openings were altered. However, staff finds that since, staff finds that since the window openings are different than what is seen in the 1969 image, we find that some, but not all, of the window openings meet the design guidelines. In general, MHCC has been more lenient with window alterations in the back half of the house and in the gable field. Staff therefore finds that the window openings of the back half of the left facade and in the gable fields are appropriate. However, staff finds that the small window opening on the left facade is not a window proportion seen historically. And that's kind of the error that's more further to the left, kind of at the midpoint. It's kind of hard to see in the image because of the shadow, but it's a small kind of window opening. Staff recommends that opening be at least a square or vertically opened window opening, and then another window opening be added that is square or vertical, kind of where the second right arrow is located. The 1969 photo does not show the house's right facade. The applicant made alterations to the window and door openings on this right facade. However, given that the door to the gable field was definitely not historic and that the window alterations happened throughout the house sometime between 1969 and 2007, staff finds that these window openings do meet the design guidelines. In neighborhood conservation zoning overlays, MHCC reviews window materials and specifications in new construction and in areas of partial demolition. In other words, MHCC must approve the window materials and specifications in areas where the size and location of the window openings changed. Therefore, the windows in the new openings and in the rear dormers should have been reviewed and approved by MHCC prior to purchase and installation. The applicant did not provide information on the window line that was installed, but in assessing the windows, staff found that they are vinyl windows with inappropriate fusion welded corners and large visible weep holes. Staff recommends that the windows in the new openings on all 4 facades and in the rear dormer be replaced with windows that are approved by MHCC. The applicant removed the non-historic vinyl siding and put plywood over the historic siding. Typically, when vinyl siding is removed in the Eastwood Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay, MHCC should inspect any historic siding underneath to determine if the siding on the main level is in good enough condition to be retained and restored. Since MHCC was not provided with this opportunity and the work was done without a permit, staff recommends that the plywood be removed from the main level of the historic house so that staff can assess whether the historic siding is in good enough condition to be retained and restored. If MHCC determines that the siding is not in good condition and can be replaced, then the replacement siding should be wood or smooth cement fiberboard with a reveal that matches the reveal of the historic siding. In addition, the historic siding, if MHCC determines that it can be removed, it should be fully removed and the new siding shouldn't just be installed over the existing plywood. Because if that were to happen, the siding would be proud of the windows and the door casings. So in conclusion, staff is recommending approval. I won't go through with all the conditions. I kind of ran through them throughout the presentation, but it's basically having to do with altering the window openings, changing the window materials themselves, and the siding on the rear dormer.
Thank you, Melissa. Applicant? Is the applicant here?
Yes, I'm ready. Good afternoon. My name is Casey Golterman, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Let me just start with accountability and intent. First of all, I take full accountability for getting involved in a project in your jurisdiction that I relied on resources other than doing the necessary due diligence that I should have done myself prior to commencing on any project. I'm a third-generation general contractor, real estate broker in Northern California, and I specialize on houses of this vintage. I've been traveling to Nashville since I was about 5 years old, about as long as I've been in construction. And this area and the architecture of the area is what has drawn me here to do a project like this. I specialize in vintage homes of this character that I could actually bring back the integrity of the original design. So at no point was I ever trying to do anything to cut corners or compromise the original integrity of the house. I just started this project without having the necessary understanding of what was required to move through your process. At home and where I'm from, it's a very different building code. The houses are built, the standard of construction is completely different. Our oversight is different. And I went on local resources input to basically guide me through this process. So here I am, and this is not the way I wanted to start working here. The property was in dire condition when I purchased it. I came here, spent about 3 days, found the house, saw that it was something that I really thought that I could see the potential in. And whoever owned it previously, the prior multiple owners had really chopped up the original structure. and compromise the integrity, not only structural integrity, but the cosmetic integrity of the house with that external staircase. The dormer that was referred to on the back of the house was built without having any type of bearing transfer of the load of that dormer. So the upper floor had a severe sag. The original roof was, the rafters were overspanned. There was just a number of very complicated structural compromises that had been taking place over the years that I basically undid and redid in a way that would be something that I could stand behind and give a warranty for. So regarding the integrity of the house, I've pretty much brought everything back to what I think is something that I can stand behind. And we've gotten the permits now that only took a short period of time to get. So we're going to have all those, justified and made sure that I get the Metro's approval on everything that was done structurally. In regard to the other comments that were made regarding vinyl windows, the use of vinyl windows was something that a decision that I made basically just not only due to the aesthetic, it had to do with the finding something that I could do that was going to be economically feasible in a house of in this neighborhood and this price point. The wood windows and the windows that are on the approved list of the commission are extremely expensive with a long lead time. I've done about 100 of these homes back in California. The lead times I've already clarified, they're between 8 to 15 weeks. And that style of a wood window is going to be probably 5 to 6 times minimum the cost of those vinyl windows that I have installed. So it was just not cost prohibitive to go ahead and order a custom Pella or something that would fit those original window openings. Regarding the siding that has been modified, the original siding was compromised. It was chopped up. I exposed all of it once we took the vinyl off of the house that had been put on probably in the 60s. Most of the siding that was either split, taken off, removed in certain sections. The original window openings have been modified sometime years and years ago. So I, at home, the California procedure in that type of an application with an old wood siding is to, we leave that wood siding in place oftentimes to eliminate a whole lot of debris removal, and we re-side it primarily. We first apply the shear wall over the existing siding, and we nail it off with a pattern to give it some structural rigidity, and that gives me the ability to put new moisture proofing on there, which was done. The original siding that was on there, if you reuse that, like what I saw was reused when I happened to be walking through the park this morning and I saw that Sonny side house. I didn't even know that was the actual home of this committee, but I'm walking through the park looking at the architecture, see the sign that's where your new office is going to be. I'm looking at the building, and that's something that really stands out to me because I like to preserve a lot of the original craftsmanship of the home. This house, I was completely unable to do that, so that's why I decided to go ahead and overlay the original siding and then go over it with a new lap siding that would meet your criteria, which was the Hardy board with a minimal overlay of lap siding, maybe less than 6 inches of a reveal. So long story short, I'm in this situation because of my own mistakes, and I'm looking to find a way to resurrect these issues so that I can move forward and continue to finish the project. And also, I want to be on good terms with this committee and this city so that I can continue to, I enjoy it here. I want to continue to find old homes that I can bring back to life again with the original integrity and quality and craftsmanship that they once had. So with that, I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gorman. We'll probably have some questions for you. I'm going to lean on them first, but I have got a question. Do you have a question to the applicant? I'll ask the first one. This is pretty obvious. Without a preservation permit, you coming from another state, and this is sort of for public hearing, so that other ones like you as a contractor comes into Nashville, and we want to make sure we've got our system going here too, because we have Hub Nashville. When you came in, did you already get your codes? You went to codes to get a permit to do this house?
When I came here, I was referred to a group of people who had been doing a lot of homes like this. So I was exposed to other developers. I don't really consider myself a developer. Other people that buy and sell old homes like this. And I went off. I was referred to some of their contractors. I thought they were contractors, but they told me that a lot of that work was not done. Typically, they don't get permits for stuff like this, and if they did, it would be something that's easy to do, and they could pull it over the counter. Well, I found out that when I did, it was months later, because I'm doing this remotely. Months later, when I got notified by Metro that I needed to get a permit, I couldn't pull it myself as a contractor or an owner builder because it was over $20,000 in valuation. So I had to then find somebody with a license to help me pull the permits.
Mm-hmm.
The permits only take no time at all. It's finding the person that would actually help me with the permits. So I was able to do that, but it took me months to find somebody that would actually help me. So,
But you didn't do the research yourself?
I did. That's what I said. I take full accountability
Right.
because the research that I should have done was third-party hearsay, and I went off of what other people were telling me was acceptable.
Okay.
So that's
We hear you. We
Yeah.
hear you, but we're going to admonish those that come into, that, when you go to get your permit, there's going to be, a process to where it'll also trigger Metro Historic Zoning Commission, so that everybody knows what they're supposed to do. So, yeah.
That was something that I didn't, I got the first call from Metro, and that's when I went to work on finding it. The contractor that I had help me didn't have the right license. So I had to find another contractor. I didn't understand
Understood.
I didn't know about the historic overlay until.
And you didn't do any research about the neighborhood?
I didn't even know we were in. I literally came here, saw the house, bought it, left, went home, and just worked remotely.
Now you know.
Now I know, yeah.
Yep.
So I will not do that again.
Okay.
Yep.
Heard. Anyone else before we open public hearing? Okay.
Have you read the recommendations?
Yes.
Are you in agreement with those? It sounds like maybe not on the windows.
I'm good with believe me, the houses I build, I like to never cut any corners or compromise. So the only thing that's hard with me is the windows, changing those windows out in that price point. It's just really economically difficult. And then the siding, taking off the shear or the sheathing that I put over the original siding due to the reveals on the windows and the trim. I do it in a way that the reveal is not compromised. We can build out the jambs and we can build out the casing on the, wherever it is that whatever Melissa was referring to with the trim being buried in the siding because of that overlay. That's never an issue.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's the reveal. I think, Melissa, how much of the plywood do you all want to take off to inspect? Is it all of it?
I would say everything on the front and two side facades. The rear facade, we're usually pretty flexible because you could build an addition and that would all go, most of it would go away anyway. So I would say the plywood on the front and the two side facades.
What you've seen, the pictures that we saw, where it looks like.
These are the only two spaces when I went out and I walked around the entire building. It was just, you can, sorry, wrong one.
Do you think that would be approved? I know that's maybe.
It was hard to tell. There wasn't enough siding there. And typically we want all of the siding removed because sometimes we find because of like weather patterns, one side facade is totally shot. The other side facade is totally fine. The front facade is often in decent shape because it was protected by the porch. So, and it really just depends upon nail holes and how that vinyl siding was installed. I mean, there's so many different variables that we kind of need to see everything.
Is taking off the sheathing feasible from a construction standpoint?
No. It's I would have kept that original siding if I could have kept it. I mean, I'd go to extreme measures to keep a lot of it, so it's.
I hear
it's
you.
Not, it's not.
I'm not questioning.
Yeah, if you take that
construction
sheathing off, it's
exactly,
gonna
rip it
splinter
off.
all that. And it's already, that's not consistent siding around the perimeter of the, it's all been cut up and.
Well, that's why I asked about the recommendations, because there are several on here that seem tough, and
Yeah, that's,
if you're up here to say yes, I think that we will, but it sounds like there are a couple that,
it's really not, I mean, as somebody who's been doing, I've been doing this my whole life, and I just can't see any of those recommendations being really feasible, economically feasible. It's just, not, it's not anything that I think that I could, accommodate.
None of them.
I'm sorry.
Well, I can,
I have a question.
the window changing, the dormer window is fine up top. That's no big deal. And the openings on the sliding window in the bathroom, changing that from a horizontal to a vertical, that's no big deal. But changing out every window to a wood window, which is like extremely expensive with extremely long lead times.
so 1, 2, and 5,
Yeah,
which is,
if
sorry.
I could, one,
That's removing the existing
One-
plywood so that staff can check the
Correct.
existing siding and removal, or replacement of windows.
correct.
Okay.
And, and
Okay.
And I'll just add that we're not asking for wood windows necessarily. There are multiple types of windows on the list that are pre-approved.
I was just, when I was speaking with Melissa, it was specifically about vinyl windows are typically not approved. And those are good quality vinyl windows that I have to put my warranty behind them anyway, so.
I hear you. That's just not, unfortunately, what we're talking about.
Okay, we'll get into discussion. Any further? Let's just give, Commissioner Cashin has a question.
I have two questions. The first is that I want to be sure I heard you correctly, that you didn't think any of the 6 recommendations were feasible, economically feasible. Is that?
I'm sorry, I can barely hear you.
That I wanted to be sure that I understood you correctly, and I thought you said that you didn't think any of the recommendations.
No, the ones that I was just referring, the ones that we just,
Okay, all right, that's one question. And the second question is, the approved windows that we do have, some are vinyl. It's just that the ones that you have installed are not on the approved list, correct?
There is just one vinyl window that we have approved to date. We are constantly looking at windows.
Sure.
Because, new materials are being developed all the time. But right now, there's just one vinyl window that we approve.
Okay, but there is one vinyl.
There's
window.
one.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
So applicant, you heard that as well, because it doesn't have to be the wood, but it would be an approved vinyl.
yeah, and I've worked, there's vinyl windows are pretty much vinyl windows, so I mean.
Understood, but there's only one approved under this
Yeah.
conservation guideline. So, any other questions? I just want to pull us together before we go to public hearing. Commissioner, still? Okay, we're real clear on the ones that he's not approval.
Yes, that's what I was trying.
You wanted to get to, sure. That way it'll helpful for our discussion, right? Okay?
But I don't think he's clear on it or has done
Well,
any
we'll get
research on that.
Yeah, we'll get it
Okay.
after we discuss. Okay, stick around. Open public hearing. Okay, we're going to close public hearing. Commissioners, discussion, more questions to the staff?
On the removing of the sheathing, which I totally understand, have y'all examined it well enough to have an educated opinion on if removal would damage the siding beyond an acceptable limit? I mean, I understand the purpose of removing and check the siding. If we know it's going to destroy the siding, I'm.
Yeah, unfortunately, from what I was able to tell, I wasn't able to get enough information to know. I mean, it's possible that it is not in great shape. It could be possible that it is, in some parts it is okay shape, some parts it's not in okay shape. I mean, there's definitely been times with siding review that we've said, this facade can stay, this facade can be removed because the siding over here is in really bad shape, so it's not always a all or nothing, it can be portions of it. And it's just really hard to know without taking off the sheathing, because again, it's just that little.
Totally understand.
Yeah,
Have y'all
so.
seen sheathing like this and had it removed and it be in decent condition?
I don't know.
Just from the removal of the sheathing.
I cannot think of a time when we've had sheathing removed, because usually it's someone's removing a vinyl or asbestos siding. This is more of an unusual case because we weren't called out before it was done, before it was covered up. Usually people just take off the siding and put on new siding, so this is a case that hasn't come up for me.
I want to clarify just one thing too. There were no permits pulled on this at all. Not a building permit through Metro, nothing.
No, they just recently applied for interior work that we don't approve, that we don't review. So that, they have that work for interior work, but when the work was done sometime in 2023, there were no permits at that point in time.
Okay.
This is not your purview, and so it may be an unfair question. Would a little bit of roof alteration and outdoor cladding, if it wasn't an historic district, would that require a building permit? Do we know the answer to that?
I don't know if I can answer that question because I am not 100% clear what triggers a code permit.
I should know the answer to that, but I was curious.
I'm just trying to process this a second. So since the applicant, let's talk about it. Since the applicant doesn't have the preservation permit, then the applicant would go to MAZC, get the permit, then we can go through this punch list. No?
We can't issue a permit until you've made a decision.
Right. Okay, just clarity.
So basically what you're asking us to do is to approve this project with all of these stipulations. Okay. And then a permit can be obtained. Okay.
Okay. Right, understood, yeah, it's difficult.
This is a challenging project, and I sympathize with the applicant, but, in a city like Nashville, we do have codes and we do have a process, and it's pretty well established. So many houses you drive by, you see the building permit posted, you see, and it's unfortunate that there are some that proceed without building permits, but those invariably wind up being the projects that are more prone to having problems for the homeowners, whether they be electrical, whether they be plumbing, whether they be roofing, whether they be storm damage, because there is a reason for the codes, and that's to ensure that we have the quality of construction that the homeowner deserves. That's one of the responsibilities of government, is to make sure that construction meets the codes. And I hate that this has gotten to this point, but I really think that the staff recommendation is appropriate. And I think that, if the applicant would like to look at the windows that the Metro has approved, the vinyl window line that has been approved, and see if that works, that's appropriate. As you start taking the siding off, the sheathing off, I'm a little skeptical just based on the photographs that are in here, plus the staff report that said that so many of the openings have been changed over time. And so when you change window openings and then you wind up, taking that with siding and taking off old trim and infilling, it makes for a very difficult place to restore to an appropriate look, the original siding. So I would encourage the applicant to work with staff. And on some of these, we've gone through and looked at them and gone out to the site, taken off some, seeing, gosh, is there a direction that we can see on this? Maybe you take off a portion of all three sides the front and the two sides, and determine if you need to take it all off. And if it's determined by the staff that the sheathing can remain, then I think the applicant needs to present detailed drawings to the staff that shows how the window openings, how the door openings, how the trim will be done to replicate the original look of the structure. You won't be able to keep the original reveal from the foundation, but I think that's less important than around the windows and the doors. And so I think that's important to do. With that, I move for approval of this with staff conditions, but I'm open to discussion. So.
Okay. Okay, Vice Chair has made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Cashin. And if there's further discussion.
I'll just second basically all of your comments, and I know I know the motion's been seconded, and I'm for it. I would hope staff will work with the applicant on the sheathing and trying to find a good way to examine as much as they need to, obviously, with as little disruption as possible. Because my fear in a lot of these cases is a halfway done abandoned building, and I hate that, and so I think all of them are reasonable, and I'm about to vote for it, but I hope they'll work hand in hand now that the applicant is working with us. All right, thanks.
No? Okay, there's been the motion. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
None opposed? Seeing none. 4 concurring votes, that passes. So thank you. Applicant, continue to work with staff, please. Scott, your mic, please. Your mic. Red light. Lower on your mic. Thank you, sir. This is your first presentation, so we'll give you one.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So 2622 Essex Place is a violation. An addition to an outbuilding has been constructed without a preservation permit. Vinyl siding and a vinyl window have been installed. So in the first slide, you'll see the house sits to the back of the property with an outbuilding to the side and slightly behind. This is the view from the alley. The older structure is visible on the right and the newer structure to the left. This is the view from the Essex Place side, the front. The wood siding of the older structure is visible on the left. The new addition framing with some of the vinyl siding installed. The vinyl window on the Essex side is not on the pre-approved list of windows and would not have been approved. The vinyl siding and metal fascia have been installed. These do not meet the design guidelines and would also have not been approved. Staff does find that the project would meet the design guidelines for height and scale, massing, and parking and driveways. So the staff recommends approval of the project with the following conditions. 1, cladding, trim, and windows are replaced with materials that meet the design guidelines and are approved prior to purchase and installation and completed within 60 days of the issuance of the permit. And 2, a site plan is submitted confirming the side setback meets bulk standards within 30 days of the date of decision prior to issuance of a permit. With these conditions, staff finds that the proposed outbuilding meets Section 2B1H of the design guidelines for outbuildings in the Hillsborough West End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay.
Thank you, Scott. Questions too? Not at the moment. Okay, we may have some questions for you anyway. All right, applicant.
Hi, everyone.
Please say your name and your address.
R.J. Barnett,
Uh-huh.
and I'm the homeowner.
Good, thank you.
I've lived at 2622 Essex Place since the mid-90s. And I brought some slides. Can I show them?
Just click.
Okay, here comes the tutorial.
Nice to meet you.
Excellent, yes, perfect. So I'll make this very quick. When my wife and I were block captains for conservation zoning for Hillsborough West End back in 2007, Elizabeth Paris, now deceased. But we went through the neighborhood, and as you heard for Richland, we've had a very successful experience with conservation zoning. And we have, hit the top one. Sorry. So, when we, back in 2007, I just kind of, in the context of the neighborhood, back in 2007, like directly across the street, we had a modest one-story, 1,000 square foot rental property that turned into this. Also, there's the alley, the driveway directly across the street from us on Essex Place. We got this. So we're very thankful for the conservation zoning overlays that it protected us, that's the word of the charter, to the extent possible. That's looking across the street. If you look up at my house, this is the view of the outbuilding. It's 115 feet set back from the road. It is set back from the house as well, from the front line of the house. And so this is what we're talking about, I think, consistent with the pictures you just saw. I will say, I was glad you showed those original pictures because it shows that original garage there, which I have put extensive time and effort into restoring and retaining structurally with the original siding, new roof, putting in a floor. And what you don't see in that original picture is there was an outbuilding there before. I didn't just decide to build this outbuilding. That's the last thing on my mind. We had a similar structure there that was damaged by termites. We had a similar structure also in front that I had to clear because of termite damage. But I was able to retain, as you saw, that original garage structure. And I had to put in a structural wall on the side that it shares with this new outbuilding. And so I basically replaced that original outbuilding with what you see here. As far as the siding, I feel strongly we made the right decision. My neighbors have, with their comments and feedback, have definitely confirmed that. I've got a lot of positives about this project and about the way we handle it and the way that it presents to the street to the extent that you can see it. But what I did here is I just mirrored, our original house was actually non-conforming. So I just mirrored what we had on the existing house. As you can see here, it's a 5-inch Dutch lap siding. It's the exact same siding that was on the house since the 90s. And I just felt like that was the right thing to do in the context of retaining everything that I possibly could about that existing garage structure. So I had to do something new, and this was the choice that I made, was to put in something that matched the house and matched the reveal to the street. It's really the same thing with the window. I did some research to try and find echoing our previous contractor, and I finally put in something that was conforming to my house. There was a renovation done in the late 90s for my original house before we did conservation zoning. And these are the windows that we put in. So it's the same windows, it's the same siding. I just really tried to retain the look and feel of what was already there to the best of my ability, and to preserve and restore everything that I possibly could, because that's what I've been doing with this structure. I think anybody else that bought this house would have torn it down and built something else, and anybody else that was faced with the termite damage that we had would have torn down the whole thing and built something much different. But I'm very much committed to retaining the character and preserving the existing structures as they are, and I did my best on this outbuilding to do the same thing. So for that reason, I think it would be a mistake to replace that siding and the window. But if you decide that's what you want me to do, I'll bite the bullet and I will certainly do it. And I would want one piece of clarification, which is my understanding of the overlay is that the only side of this that's in play is the front side. But maybe I'm mistaken about that. So that's pretty much what I have to say.
Respectfully, sir, since you were involved in the early parts of doing the design guidelines, what was your reasoning of not getting a preservation permit?
The main reasoning was that my understanding was that the house was non-conforming. And so I didn't really have a clear understanding of the fact that I had to come before the Historical Commission when I was making, as the homeowner, this change. And frankly, I thought I was on perfectly solid ground because I was mirroring what had been there since long before conservation zoning. I just did not understand that I needed to do that. Now I do.
It's unfortunate. Also, the siding on your house now, when you're saying you did similar, what type of siding is that?
It's a 5-inch Dutch lap. It's a vinyl siding.
It's vinyl siding?
It is. See, yep.
Okay, all right. Anyone else have questions for Mr. Barnett? Okay, you'll still be here for a minute, so I'm sure we might have some questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Open public hearing? Close public hearing.
I'll start us off, hopefully with something easy. Scott, reading the recommendations, just want to clarify. The outbuilding itself, though we do want a site plan to confirm setbacks and the bulk standards, that appears to meet design guidelines, just the size, the shape, the roof, et cetera, except for cladding and windows. Is that correct?
Yes, the side setbacks.
We don't know about the setback, but yes, the massing, scale, height meets the guidelines.
I have another question. Was this a situation, there was a building permit and just not a historical zoning permit?
No, I do not believe there was a building permit.
There was, okay. Because I would think with the building permit, you'd have to submit a site plan.
Can you confirm that the vinyl siding on the new structure is identical vinyl siding to the original structure?
Just from the pictures, no, I guess I couldn't. I have not measured it.
Do what? You want to ask the applicant? Yeah, well, he already said, he kind of already said.
No, sir, we're in discussion, so until we ask, thank you.
I tend to have some sympathy for the gentleman, because.
Did he answer your question?
No, he didn't answer my question. He didn't know. mean, I can see where the vinyl window kind of stands out as different from the other windows, but I don't know.
I have a question for staff. In the photo in the staff recommendation from the front, you see the different structures, but it looks to the left like it's unfinished or something unusual there with, it looks unfinished and open. Can you shed any light on what that is?
I assume that is like a covered patio.
Is it finished up? When you were on, is that the question?
The
Commissioner?
last time I was there, it was not 100% finished.
Is there any siding on the house or the existing garage that is not vinyl? That is maybe a more period appropriate, or is it all vinyl?
There is some original wood siding. You can see some in this picture that may have already been painted, but in that picture with the Z shape on the doors, that section right there, the original section, that still has the wood siding on it.
And the rest of the house is vinyl?
Correct.
The commissioner has asked on the front as well. All that, the picture, can you just shift it to the second picture again, Scott? There's another picture, I think, maybe.
Picture of the
No.
house.
Yeah.
Front.
The front. That, anyway. Yeah, it's Commissioner page 7 on the
May
recommendation.
not be in the presentation. There it is. That's close.
There you go.
So this is a tough one, based on the existing condition of the house. Again, no permits is concerning, and, it tends to not turn out well when you start without a permit. So I tend to have some sympathy with the siding aspect of it, but it does appear to be unfinished on the left-hand side. I think that needs to be reviewed by staff as to how it will be finished, what will happen to that. It looks like 2x4s holding up part of the roof and that kind of thing. So, and the other thing that I see is that although the window is close, the new window is a 1/1. The existing window that you see there, the existing windows are 3/1 with the mullions. And I would, my sense would be that I could have some forgiveness on the vinyl siding in this one instance simply because of the existing context. And it's not something I'd want to see again, but it'd probably be the first time I've ever seen us approve vinyl siding. But I do think the windows should be changed out. And on the staff recommendation, the one change I would make would be that the time, I think it has a 2-month window for completion. And with, I've just bought some windows and that's really tight. So I would think that we might make some allowance in that time for conformance based on availability of windows and be able to extend that. I would say 90 days would probably be. Yeah, 120 would be fine, sure.
I totally agree on all points with you.
What the commissioner was saying is that she is concurring with Vice Chair to do 120 days instead of the 60 on number 1. However, there is a specific deadline on number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Would you
Yes.
stay with that, or 120 as well?
No, I'd stay with that.
No, I think 30.
30?
It's pretty close.
Okay. So 120 days on number 1 and number 2 is 30 days.
Right. And I think within that number 2 as well, you would put drawings showing what the finished elevation would look like, especially that area that seems to be unfinished now.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Let's be clear again, Vice Chair, this is an unusual one if we approve this as a commission, that because, and I think you've said it, is because the context is vinyl. And that is why we are leaning towards that. But until we do the vote, we just want to be clear so that we don't get ourselves in a position for next time to say, yep, we'll approve that because one was like this. We don't want to get caught in that.
And from what the applicant said, it appears to have been vinyl for 30 years or more, so.
You compromise? Okay, well, do we need to repeat that as a motion, or is there other?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just so on number one, we're removing the cladding from that number one
Mm-hmm.
and trim?
Yeah.
And leaving windows?
Yeah, windows remains.
Okay,
Yep,
all right.
so that does get replaced.
Okay, when we make this motion, let's be real clear. Vice Chair, that's a good question. Yes, good question. Anyone else on making this clear recommendation? Good. All right, Vice Chair, would you say that one more time, please? This is going to be your motion?
Sure.
Okay.
This is a motion. So with respect to 2622 Essex Place, I move for approval of this project with the following conditions: that the window is replaced with a window that meets the design guidelines and are approved prior to purchase and installation and completed within 120 days of the issuance of the permit. And number two, that a site plan and drawings of the remaining unfinished parts of the building be submitted to confirm the side setback meets bulk standards, and that the construction to be completed meets the guidelines, and that be submitted within 30 days of the date of the decision prior to the issuance of a permit.
Vice Chair, I'm going to say this one more time. So on number one, the cladding is removed.
Cladding and trim are removed.
Okay, just to be real clear on that. Okay, thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Commissioner Mayhaw. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Seeing none, 4 concurring votes, that passes. Thank you.
The next case is 322 Broadway. The application for 322 Broadway is to replace the storefront windows along the Broadway and 4th Avenue elevations of 322 Broadway. The building at 322 Broadway was constructed in 1860 and contributes to the Broadway Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay. In April of 2010, the MHZC approved and permitted replacement of the non-original storefront windows along the Broadway and 4th Avenue elevations. Today, the applicant requests to replace those windows that were installed in 2010 with a new window system. The existing windows are not historic, therefore replacement is appropriate. The applicant requests to replace all existing storefront windows along the Broadway and 4th Avenue elevations with a new Solar Innovations folding glass window system. As can be seen in the drawings on this slide and in the applicant's rendering in the bottom right corner of this slide, the system that is proposed has thick vertical divisions between each glass panel, which significantly alters the appearance of the storefront windows. The window system approved in 2010 was a dorma glass operable window system that can be seen in the top image of this slide as installed. The windows that were approved have a horizontal metal bar at the top and bottom that read as part of the window frame, but otherwise have no other vertical or horizontal divisions. Even though each storefront window is a folding system composed of multiple panels of glass, the windows each read as one large single pane of glass because there are no vertical divisions between the glass panels. This allows each storefront window to maintain the historic appearance of a single pane storefront window as the building would have had originally. While currently each storefront window reads as one single pane within each opening, the proposed window system would read as multiple windows within each opening because of the thick vertical divisions. And that can be seen in the bottom image of this slide. That's a rendering that was provided by the applicant. In the past, the MHZC has found systems such as the current dormer glass system to meet the design guidelines when the original configuration was a large display window as seen in this 1950s historic photo of 322 Broadway. That being said, the MHZC has found window systems such as the proposed solar innovation system to not meet the design guidelines for buildings that had display windows, because when closed, the thick mullions do not produce the look of a large glass pane. Staff recommends disapproval of the proposed storefront window replacement at 322 Broadway, finding that the proposal does not meet Section 2 rehabilitation of the design guidelines for the Broadway Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay.
Thank you, Joseph. Applicant?
Hi, I'm Sherry Young, Senior Vice President of IMCMV, Margaritaville, shorten it up for you. We are requesting to replace these windows. Although they are individual pane windows, we feel they pose a safety risk on Lower Broadway. Most of, the Broadway business model is that you would open those windows so your music can be heard from the outside and it just draws people into your building. I'm also asking for approval because if I may share some pictures, there are a lot of locations already on Lower Broadway that pose the same windows that we have or that we are requesting right now. Whiskey Row, which is directly across from us, as you can see, has the same windows that we are requesting. I actually put you a little circle there so you can see we're right across from there. Rippy's, Friends in Low Places, but that's just to name a few. But as you can see, these windows that we're asking for are really all on Lower Broadway, so we're not looking for anything that hasn't already been approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Open public hearing? Close public hearing? Commissioners discuss?
I remember this case from 14 years ago, and Broadway would look very, very different 14 years ago than it does now. And I remember the Historic Commission turned down windows that would open, and at the time, and Margaritaville said, well, we're not coming if we can't have windows that open. And so that's what opened Broadway, from what I recall. I don't know if you were here 14 years ago. You were? Am I stating this correctly? And so, it's hard for me to tell with these pictures the similarities. Can you address that?
Yeah, one of them is a violation, and the other one that she mentioned was new construction. So it's not quite apples to apples. And as you well know, being more familiar than anyone else with that area, is that historically, mainly on 2nd Avenue, but some on Broadway, you historically had storefronts that were more like French doors. They weren't the typical storefront shop window. But this building, from the earliest photos we can find, had a shop window. So some of the windows like what they're showing would be appropriate for a building that used to have those French doors, but not for a building that had a storefront window.
Thank you, Robin. I don't know, I have a bit of an issue with not allowing French doors if they're on other buildings on Broadway. And I didn't know if the windows were site-specific.
I'm not as familiar with Lower Broad as you are in 2nd Avenue, but I do know that, as Robin said, some of these, like this one, I think was a furniture store. So it was made and designed to have big plate glass windows so that you could see the furniture inside the store. And there were others that were offices or other things that would have had optical windows. I know some of those were modified over the years. We saw one a few years ago that had an Ed Keeble, there was the original window pattern, and then Ed Keeble came in and redid it in the 40s, and so some of those have changed over the years as well. It's hard for me to know, but I do know that what the staff recommendation is here, I think is right, in that the original windows on this building, the historic windows, were big plate glass windows that weren't, smaller divided windows with less visibility. So that's.
I'm also sympathetic seeing kind of how many examples of a divided window that clearly has been allowed downtown along Broadway. I'm trying to read through the guidelines for the exact language, and it is in keeping, obviously, with staff's recommendation of trying to keep it site specific. So I'm torn. I'm sympathetic to the applicant. I think it's a good looking window, and clearly it's there in many other instances.
While you're on that thought, of course, some of our things is just not to set precedents. Would there be any other building under the DTC that would have this, that would come before us at some point? Yeah. I think that's where we're cautioned. Just to say, and because Broadway is sensitive, and when we approve one, they're going to come back. If there is one, I want to, like I said, if there's another example of a storefront where it's site specific.
This was, I'll just say, because I do remember it very well when this first came about. This was the first project to do this. And we were very concerned about allowing for these operable windows on the storefront. And the only reason it was allowed was because of the way it was designed. It did mirror one big piece of glass. But again, historically, not every building had that. And I'll reiterate again that one of those is a violation. One of them is newer construction and not a historic building. So I do think my recommendation is to look at it on a case-by-case basis. And this particular building just didn't have that kind of design.
I did think in the staff recommendation on page 6, you had figure 9 in there that showed some of the buildings on 2nd Avenue that were designed to have narrower windows where this type of window would be appropriate. And there are some that looked more like warehouses on 2nd Avenue. And so there's a lot of different vernacular for those buildings. And if you look at the historical aspect of these buildings, you really look at building by building and not as a neighborhood. So you wouldn't want every house in the same neighborhood to have the same windows. And so I think saying that there are others that have different windows or have the same windows, it's not necessarily applicable to this building. So.
Just another thought is that, in the future, maybe this particular entity won't be there. And so then that use changes. And so then do we continue to go to, I think what Vice Chair has said is that, it is site specific, and just because the other one across the street has one. And again, this applicant is today. What happens when it changes, the environment in Broadway changes? Just futuristically.
So realizing this is one that we struggle with, I think every project on Broadway we struggle with, but trying to accommodate, but also keep the integrity of that building, of that area. I'll go ahead and put out a motion, and may or may not pass. So with respect to 322 Broadway, I move for disapproval per the staff recommendation.
Vice Chair has made a motion. Is there a second? Second by Beth Cashin. Okay, we're going to try to see how this goes. All in favor of the motion on the table, raise your hand. Okay. Those opposed? 2 opposed, which means I will break the tie.
You still would need 4 votes,
Still.
so we have to have another motion.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, that is not an active motion now because we don't have 4 concurring votes.
Correct, that motion
Okay.
has failed.
All right. Well, let's discuss it some more. What are your apprehensions, opposition? Mike, please.
Just seems the same type of window throughout the historic overlay. It's not a different functioning window. I guess there's one divider, so. There is a divider. There's no question. It looks like they are keeping several of the more plate glass style to the right of the entrance, or at least not replacing them at the moment. I mean, that's just, I'm sympathetic to that minor change.
If I could jump in again, just because this has a lot of repercussions. And I will say again that we had a lot of heartache when we first approved this 14 years ago. And staff's opinion, this is just staff speaking, we regret ever having allowed for operable windows at the storefront. So if this is allowed where there was not a design like this, I think you're really opening a door to everybody. And maybe that's what you want to do. I'm just throwing it out there.
I hear you on precedent. That just doesn't sway me as much because I'm trying to take these one at a time. And I think we talk a lot about precedent on Broadway, and I understand the reasoning because you got a lot of active business owners who are probably paying attention. But I don't think that supersedes the right of the property owner because we're worried about his neighbor 3 doors down. I have a hard time looking at it like that.
And I would agree with that, and that's not how we're making our decision.
I totally understand. I think you are making it.
And if-
I don't question.
And I would just say, if you do end up approving it, if you'd give reasons as to why this building's different from any other building.
I'm happy to approve every picture I saw and the next one too. I think if you have an operable window and you want to move to a different operable window, that's really not a problem. I was not here 14 years ago, so I am out of that loop, and I hear you. But I don't think we can really go backwards at this point either. It seems like that's spread, so I understand your fear. So what happens if we deadlock?
It's approved as,
It would be approved.
I want to say one thing. Also, Commissioner Stewart, very worried about precedent. And I think oftentimes when you're looking at these wonderful buildings and the great character of these buildings, you give a little here, you give a little there, and then it's gone. And I'm very concerned about that.
What other buildings on Broadway have this type of issue?
well, again, there's one that's a violation, one that she pointed out.
Which one?
What was it? Whiskey Row? There's so many whiskeys, I
Okay.
forget which one. Yes. But it was a violation that staff didn't catch. And then another one is Rippy's, which is not a historic building
Right.
and was constructed prior to the overlay.
And so are there any other buildings then on Broadway that would want to come up and
I'm sure they all will.
they all will?
And we're not saying that we want to back up on the idea of operable windows. I mean, yeah, we do, but we're not saying that. But we're saying that the design should look like one large piece of glass as was approved 14 years ago.
So every other building on Broadway that has operable windows, they are one sheet of glass.
It depends on the building. So if historically they had a storefront.
So you said they all will, so.
If you approve this without any explanation as to why this building is different from any other building, then you have opened the door, I would think. You know, the next person who comes in, how will you tell them they can't have it when you just told someone else they could?
I just don't understand how large of a ramification it is on Broadway.
It would be every building that does, I mean, again, it's not about operability. It's about the design. And so
Every
then
building.
everyone would be allowed to take what was a, I keep calling it storefront, but what was a shop window where you could look in and see what the wares were there for sale. It would allow every building that has that to change to a design like this, potentially. I mean, again, you do take it on a case-by-case
Do you have any
basis.
idea how many buildings that is on Broadway?
I don't have a number now.
And I would imagine that we're not just talking about Broadway. We have Second Avenue, we have the downtown overlay. So I don't think it's limited to just Lower Broad.
I just wondered how large of a problem it is.
We're anticipating that. Also, you know, I'm going to just say this in general. You know, when we have our guidelines, which are definites, they're not in italics, they're clearly a shall kind of requirement, and 2C1 says original display windows and their component elements should be retained. Should be is a strong word. And I think, and again, I hear Commissioner Smith when you say because you see it all the way in the Broadway area, you know, is that a good enough reason for the staff to say that in the minutes, that we change that or that it passed because of that?
I'm reading that replacement of street-level facades should be in keeping with the style and period of the building. Use contemporary materials for the replacement elements. Street-level facades may be appropriate if they possess characteristics similar in scale, design, finish, texture, durability, and detail and historic materials and meet the Secretary standards. Now, I'm not familiar with Secretary standards. It seems like it meets the other requirement to me.
Can we pull the Secretary standards?
Yes, if you have access to your guidelines, they're in the front of the guidelines. But essentially, they say repair rather than replace, and when replacement is necessary, to replace in kind. So that is the reason for our guidance to replace in kind.
But if you were to replace in kind, you never would have approved these windows in the first place.
We approved them because the way they were designed, they look like one big piece of glass. The current proposal is to change that.
Right.
So storefronts, if replacement storefronts or component elements are necessary, replacement should be compatible with the materials, composition, design, texture, and general appearance of the original. Replacement should use physical or photographic evidence to replicate the original appearance.
Can I ask a question of the applicant? Is there a specific reason why why you've not proposed a kind of more in keeping with the current look of a single pane?
What, ma'am? we've closed public hearing, but I want to ask the commissioners if they'll allow you to come and speak. Okay? Sure, come, Ms. Young. When we've closed public hearing, a lot of times we just have to be sure we're in protocol.
Certainly. The reason that we are changing these windows out is on Lower Broadway, it's busy. There's a lot of folks down there. They lean on those windows. Anytime you have just single panes of glass that accordion style fold up, they're not as sturdy as they are with the ones that have the mullions around it. That's the only reason we're looking to replace them, is from a safety standpoint, to make sure that we don't have a risk there. Those windows have been in place since 2014. And they need to be replaced. But the technology on those windows has far surpassed what it was back then, with being able to have those mullions around it to really have a good sturdy window there that we feel is a much safer option than what we currently have.
So have you looked at options, and this is the same line of, you've
Yes,
looked
ma'am.
at solid glazed, and you did not find that appropriate?
We just didn't find that they would have the stability of any time that you have a metal framing around a piece of glass. That stability is just not going to be there. We're just having a single pane of glass held together with, I'm going to call it the brackets that hold them in between.
I hear what you're saying, and it sounds like it makes sense. However, with the current glass technology, tempered glass, I mean, somebody would, no matter how big it is with a big piece of tempered glass, you could take a 300-pound, halfback and run him into it and not have any problem with it. So but I hear what you're saying. I understand that, but as an architect, I don't hesitate to put in large pieces of glass with the appropriate technology, the appropriate type of glass to provide the safety.
Yeah, and I don't think it is the concern of somebody throwing something through the glass. It's when those accordion style back, the stability of that track for them to slide back on. And here again, I couldn't tell you. I'm only going on the recommendations from the architects and the contractors that we've spoke with.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the public hearing still open?
No, sir.
You just reopened it.
Because the commission wanted to ask an applicant a specific question, so that is not public comment.
Are you closing public hearing again?
I didn't realize we opened public hearing. I thought they
Okay,
were
it was just for the
question.
question, that one comment. Okay.
Let's make a new motion. Commissioner, Vice Chair? So
I'm
we're
okay with
okay
him
with
making
that?
a new motion.
Okay. All right, so legal, I just want to make sure, does he need to reiterate the motion or
Someone should state a new motion.
say that one more time?
Someone should state a new
A
motion.
new motion. Vice Chair?
No, I don't have a new motion.
Okay. All right, well, then one of you two. Okay, thank you.
I move to adopt staff recommendation of disapproval.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Cashin. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, there are 4 concurring votes, and that passes. Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, the next case is 904 Fatherland Street. The application is for the new construction of an addition to a non-contributing house and a new outbuilding. The existing house at 904 Fatherland Street was constructed in 1963 and does not contribute to the Edgefield Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay. Contributing houses in this context range from modest 1-story houses to modest 1 1/2-story houses along this block of Fatherland. On this slide, the top image, 904 Fatherland Street is right there in the center, and then that's a contributing house to the left and a non-contributing house to the right. And then in the bottom image, that's adjacent contributing houses along Fatherland, all 1 to 1 1/2 story in height. No contributing houses along this block of the 900 block of Fatherland Street exceed 1 1/2 stories. There is only one contributing 2-story house in the entire 900 block of Fatherland, and it is located at 921 Fatherland Street, which is outside the radius that the MHZC typically considers when evaluating appropriate height, and is an outlier for this block of largely 1 to 1.5 story contributing houses. So that house at 921 Fatherland, that can be seen indicated by the blue on this slide up towards the top of the slide. The pinkish color is 904 Fatherland. There are 2 additional contributing 2-story houses further down on Fatherland. They're in the next block over, so the 800 block. That's also outside the radius that the MHCC typically considers immediate historic context. Those are the 2 blue ones down towards the bottom of the screen. All other properties on this block of Fatherland are either 1 to 1.5 story contributing houses, or they're non-contributing. While additional 2-story contributing houses may exist on other streets in the overlay, the historic context is different on those streets, as it often varies street by street. And the MHCC looks at the immediate historic context, and specifically at the historic context along the block face of the subject property. The applicant's proposal is a full 2 1/2 story house with a proposed ridge height, eave height, and overall massing that exceed that of the immediate historic context. Staff finds that the proposed infill does not meet the design guidelines in terms of overall height and scale. Staff finds that the proposal could meet the design guidelines in terms of orientation and materials if the overall height and scale met the design guidelines. The width of the existing house is not proposed to change, and the proposal meets all base zoning setbacks. The application also includes an outbuilding in the rear yard, and this is the outbuilding. While the proposed primary building on the site is 2 1/2 stories, staff finds that a maximum height of 1 to 1 1/2 stories is appropriate for this site. Therefore, to meet the design guidelines, the outbuilding should not exceed 1 1/2 stories, with a max ridge height of 25 feet and a max eave height of 10 feet. While the proposed ridge height meets the design guidelines, the eave height should be lowered across the outbuilding to be a maximum of 10 feet from the highest point of existing grade. Staff finds otherwise the outbuilding meets all guidelines in terms of setbacks and site requirements, footprint, roof shape, and fenestration. Staff recommends disapproval of the proposed project for 904 Fatherland Street, finding that the project does not meet the design guidelines for the Edgefield Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay.
Thank you, Joseph. Applicant?
Hi, I'm Allison Cook, owner of 904 Fatherlands, my wife Elaine. I've owned this house for 10 years, lived in historic Edgefield for 20 years, lived a few blocks away for 10 years prior to buying this house. Today's actually the anniversary of me buying this house. 10 years ago when I bought this house, it's 850 square feet. I was single with a dog, so it works for me. I am now married with 2 stepkids, 2 dogs, and aging parents that we would like to live with us. So we, decided we looked around at new houses or different houses, but it broke our hearts to leave the neighborhood, so we decided to add on to this one. We purposely selected an architect who has won numerous awards for historic preservation, Preston Quirk, and our builder is here with us as well. He's also won numerous historic preservation awards with Artisan Construction. I think we have this is our slideshow. Yeah.
Okay. And so I guess I just would like to add that we are proposing a 2-story addition. It's not 2.5. Maybe that was something that needed some clarification. And based on, we appreciate that the staff looks at the contributing properties, but there are many non-contributing properties, including our property on our street as well as in historic Edgefield. And so this map shows all of the contributing as well as non-contributing properties in the immediate vicinity. And based on this, there are 52 two-story residents in total in just this portion of historic Edgefield. If you just look at the houses on Fatherland Street, our street, 24% of them are two-story. 8 of those are newer, built after the year 2000. So there seems to be some sort of a pattern, or that we are just trying to conform to, with non-contributing houses being turned into two-story houses on our street. A couple specific examples. So this is 815 Fatherland. This is just a few houses down from us, surrounded by two 1.5 stories and a 1-story, similar to what we are surrounded by, non-contributing as well as contributing houses around us.
And
the design is the design of 815 Fatherland is almost exactly what we would like to have approved as well. 812 Boscobel, which was just, 912 Boscobel, which was just completed recently and is currently for sale, is a 2-story infill that really towers above its neighbors, a 1.5 story and a 1-story home directly next to it. So if, our project is about 1,000 square feet less than what was built here. So we don't believe that our project is out of scale, or if this was approved, our project seems to be within these guidelines as well. And then finally, 717 Fatherland was built in 2021, again, surrounded by buildings that are very similar to what surrounds our house, 2 1-story non-contributings and a 1.5 story. So we absolutely appreciate the staff recommendations, and will make every effort to comply with all the building material guidelines. We love this street, and we want to, add to the character and value of the neighborhood. We went to our neighbors and had them sign this petition of support, including our next door neighbors and the people directly across from us, some of the examples that you've shown today. And everyone that we've talked to is in full support of our project, and they feel that it's within the character of our street, and it's going to add value to their property as well as the neighborhood as a whole. So, Cook.
One thing else I wanted to mention, just looking at the level of stories on our street, with 1 stories and 1.5, after our house, we're on a very level lot. After our house towards 10th, Fatherland starts sloping up. So the 1.5 story, 2 doors down, is gonna be about even with us at 2 stories, or, give or take a little. Can't guarantee it will be even, but it's not gonna feel like it's towering over.
Just given the topography of how Fatherland slopes up. Thank you.
And again, I've lived in this neighborhood for 20 years. It's the only place I've owned a home. It's the only place I want to own a home. We want to live here for 20 more with our kids and my parents. And so we're hoping that you will approve this project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Open public hearing. Close public hearing. Joseph, can you show us some more pictures of the context, historical context?
Yeah, I can go back to the one that I had. I don't have, Here's the two photos from the.
And these are across the street, right?
So both of these are on the same block face. So in the top one, 904 Fatherland is there in the center. That's that one-story house. And then that's adjacent, context on each side, non-contributing on the right, contributing on the left. And then the bottom is continuing down the street, the 1 to 1.5 story houses.
Same block.
All of those are contributing on the bottom.
Same
edge.
block.
Same block, yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm reading in the report that, so this is non-contributing home. Starting 10 years ago, 2015, historic holds those, only takes the context of contributing into account.
So we only took we've always only taken the context of the contributing context into account. But more recently, we've looked at the more immediate vicinity around the house for looking at that contributing context. Back prior to 2015, we had a larger radius. We were looking at the entire, blocks around it. And if there was a 2-story house anywhere around, it was, we took it into consideration. But then we realized the context is actually a little tighter than that. There's, like in this case, there's 1 to 1.5 story houses that are contributing all around it. And if you take a 2-story house that's kind of out of context and use that as a reference, that totally changes the context of this block.
The others were approved, you think, before when
the earliest
context
one
was broader?
On this block of Fatherland, the most recent one was 2015. So none have been approved on this block of Fatherland since 2015. There have been 2-story infill approved in this overlay since 2015. Some of the ones she referenced, Boscobel, there was a 2022 2-story infill approved there, but there was a 2-story contributing house just 2 houses down from that on the same block face. So again, looking at that tighter radius, that was well within the radius of what we would have looked at.
Joseph, sorry, Commissioner. Also on page 6, the recommendation, the proposal is a 2 1/2 story building. However, the applicant said it's only 2 stories, so where are we conflicting there?
Sure. So because it has a dormer, it's got 2 stories and then that dormer, we look at the exterior massing, and we call that a 2.5 story because it's 2 levels and then the dormer makes it a 1/2 story. So if it's got dormers on top of the 2-story massing, then we consider that a 2.5 story.
Okay, thank you. We're looking on Google. Just give us, because I think the main issue here is that how it relates to our historic context. Because it's, the rhythm and spacing context is 1 1/2 stories through that block. As you said, it's, our overview is more contained to, that instead of to another street or to the next block, et cetera.
Speaking a little into staff's analysis of this lot as well, there are a handful of non-contributing houses close by on this block. So we kind of take into consideration how that will set a precedent. So if a 2.5 story house is approved here, then those non-contributing houses may also be coming down the road at some point. And so that could totally change this entire block of the 900 block of Fatherland to be a little larger than what it is now.
There's a note on here about the corner commercial subdistrict. Is that Is that where this property is? For those lots located within the corner commercial subdistrict of the Five Points redevelopment district?
That's referenced to an MDHA document, doesn't apply to this
Okay,
property.
that's what I want to make sure. Thanks.
You know, we don't have any easy projects this, this session, but, and I understand where the applicant's coming from and what their needs are. You know, I did have to go and pull up Google Earth just to try to get a better context of the street in this block. And when I stand in front of this house and I look either way on the street, they're all 1 and 1.5 story houses. So I think although there is a trend in the area to do 2 stories where possible, I think for this street, clearly the character of this street is 1.5 stories, 1 to 1.5 stories. So I see that there are a number of opportunities with non-contributing homes on this street that will be replaced in the future. So I think that with respect to 904 Fatherland, the staff recommendation's right on. So.
Is that a motion?
Sure. With respect to 904 Fatherland Street, I move for disapproval of the proposed project based on staff recommendations.
Vice Chair Stewart has made a motion and Commissioner Mayhaw has second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? 1 opposition. 1, 2, 3. So legal.
You may vote.
Okay, I will vote now and I will vote for the motion. So that is 4 concurring votes with the chair and 1 opposition. Commissioner Smith. Duly noted. Okay, thank you very much. Applicant, please continue to work with staff.
All right, the next case is 429 Broadway. The business at 429 Broadway is located within several buildings, half of which are historic and half of which are non-contributing. This application pertains to the non-contributing portion of the building, and the request is to enclose the upper level. This property is located at the corner of Broadway and Representative John Lewis Way. So you can see here on the left is the Broadway facade, and the right photo is the Representative John Lewis Way facade. At the February 2024 meeting, the commission disapproved enclosure of the second level with roll-up garage doors. The proposal before you today is to retain the existing brick columns and cornice, while adding additional brick columns along with stone lintels and sills to create more of a punched opening appearance along both facades. According to the submitted plans, roll-up doors are proposed to be located approximately 6 feet 9 inches on the interior of the exterior walls to create an interior terrace. So here you see the Broadway elevation as well as a section of the proposed enclosure. The additional brick columns along with the stone lintels and sills create more of a punched opening appearance, as said before, moving the upper level closer to meeting the design guidelines. Also, since the existing openings are currently windowless, staff finds that it can be appropriate for the openings to continue to be windowless. So here we see the Representative John Lewis Way facade. The proposed design is similar to the Broadway facade, with the exception of the 2 openings on the far right of the elevation, which those are proposed to be fold-up openings located in the window opening. While the overall design of the terrace can meet the design guidelines, the operability of the fold-up windows would not. When windows are open, they impact the look of the building as much as they do as when they are closed. And as a result, the commission has found that the windows must meet the design guidelines when the windows are open as well as when they are closed. In the Broadway overlay, operable windows in the upper levels historically were limited to single and double hung windows or industrial style windows with a small hopper window that would open out for ventilation, which for the style of building would not be appropriate. Fold-up windows have only been approved by the commission on step-back additions where there is minimal visibility. When in an open position, the fold-up windows do not have the look of a single or double hung window in terms of proportion, design, or the rhythm of openings that are achieved with punched openings with single or double hung windows where each sash is in a different plane. So here is a rendering of the Broadway facade with the recessed roll-up door open as well as closed, and a rendering of the Representative John Lewis Way facade. The open rendering on the right, however, does not show the fold-up windows in the open position. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval of this terrace option with the following conditions: that the windows shall be single or double hung, and operate in a manner that meets the design guidelines, and 2, that the final selections of the windows as well as the brick and stone samples be approved prior to purchase and installation. And with these conditions, staff finds that the enclosure, including materials, can meet the design guidelines for the Broadway overlay.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yes.
Applicant?
Good afternoon. Steve Meisner for RSF Investors LLC, which is the entity that owns and operates the very best barbecue on Broadway, Rippy's Barbecue. This building has been owned by Steve Smith since it was an empty lot where we were selling T-shirts when the building first came into existence. Mr. Smith and some of his partners, Jeff Rippey, and the Ross family built what's there now. I think Ms. Siegler and the staff did a good job, not only in this particular request, but also in the previous request. Going through some of the history, I won't bore you all with that now, but it was a non-conforming building that was sort of breathed into existence by Mr. Smith, who also owns Tootsie's and some of the other buildings on Broadway, which you all are familiar with. Today represents a long and difficult, sometimes contentious battle between historic zoning and the owners of this building, principally because of what the ownership group and a lot of the adjacent businesses, notably Bridgestone Arena and the Predators organization, thought was the best design and use of the building on the second floor, and that is as an open-air patio. There's a bar there, and last time we were here, we were talking a little bit about some of the difficult circumstances that we've run into during inclement weather. We had a hearing in circuit court this past year over getting relief from a prior order to allow us to enclose the second floor with at least plastic and some framing in order to protect the second floor from some very dangerous cold conditions that we had last year, which were unusual for this area. So we're at the tail end of that, and our goal was to work with the staff to find some design that would meet 2 particular goals. One is to improve the historic view of the existing building, which is in compliance. The second floor, as it exists now, can be vastly improved and is vastly improved from a historical perspective visibly. It is a marked improvement from what's there. And that was our first goal, was to bring the second floor, the visibility of the second floor, which is a prominent position on Broadway, given where it is, and the open courtyard in front of Bridgestone Arena makes it more prominent feature as you enter into the Broadway district. So we wanted to work with staff and our architect to see if we could find something, which is why you'll read in the report, in the recommendations, there were several different designs that had been submitted. They're not for your consideration today, but I wanted you to know that we had submitted, and we had spent a considerable amount of time. We've deferred 2 meetings because of staff saying we don't like that, so we just said, all right, we'll step back and try again. And we'll keep trying until we get everything right from a historic perspective. So that was our first goal. Second goal was to preserve the open air nature of the second floor for the Predators fans and other sports fans and music fans who go to Bridgestone Arena for concerts. That was a goal of ours, was to preserve that. And I think with the design that we have now, I think we've accomplished that. The roll down doors will be, and I know this was a concern of the commission last time, that we can't just have a temporary condition because there's no way to really regulate temporary windows and things like that during inclement weather. But I could all but assure you that if it's not cold outside, those doors will be up. We've also had some issues here of late on Broadway with crime, people coming in to open-air rooftops and getting access to the building and terrorizing the property on the inside. So this design will assist with that. When it's late at night until early morning, we can pull those down if need be to preserve the integrity of the inside of the building from people who might try to scale the wall, Spider-Man criminals. And it's happening, so it just is what it is. So it serves a purpose, and I think it improves the way the building looks. Maybe not exactly what Ms. Ziegler and the staff wanted, but it's closer. And it's not exactly what the owner wanted, but it's closer. So that's where we are. The only thing I would add is the distance of one of the comments in the report was that these drop-down garage doors that'll create the veranda will be somewhere between 4 and 6 feet from the exterior of the building, which will put them entirely inside of the building. It will create a veranda, and we're going to continue to work with staff. Ms. Ziegler and I have been emailing this morning and yesterday about that, and we intend to work with staff on all of the materials so that we can come out of this contentious relationship that we've had for the last decade. So I think with that, those are all the comments I have, and I don't guess we take questions anymore. I thought we would last time, and I learned. Does anyone have any questions for me?
At the moment.
Thank you very much.
Not at the
Appreciate
moment.
your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it, yours as well. Okay, open public hearing. Closed public hearing.
So it would be, I think, a great blessing for everyone to be able to put this one to bed. And after all these, times, both from the owner's standpoint and our standpoint of struggling with this property, I appreciate the owner, Mr. Meisner, working with staff and presenting a proposal that has enough definition to it to be reviewed and taken care of. Based on the staff presentation, the staff recommendation, it looked to me like one of the conditions here, the second one about the windows, and the first one about the windows, that window that they proposed looks very much like a double-hung window. So I don't really see why a double-hung window wouldn't serve the same function for this, and that would be in compliance with what the staff recommendation is. So, but based on that, unless there's other conversation, I move for approval.
Excuse me 1 second, just to make sure we're clear, because right now the recommendation on the staff report is for 6 feet, for those windows to be stepped back almost 7 feet, but they are requesting that it be a minimum of 4 feet. So I just wanted to, so that would need to be a part of the motion if you agree to lessening it to 4 instead of almost 7.
Okay. So, well, based on that, then Melissa, can you explain to me what the impact of 4 feet would be versus the 6 feet 9?
Well, I think moving that garage door, forgive my voice, I'm in the process of losing it. It may impact whether or not there is actually a terrace, but it would still create a condition where the garage doors would be interior to the building. And given that there's an existing condition where this building has an open air second level, which is not something that's likely to be approved going forward and not, I don't believe, seen anywhere else currently on Broadway. I think it would still be an interior condition that could meet the design guidelines with that 4-foot inset for that garage door. So.
Then with that, I'll modify my motion that I move for approval of this with the following conditions: that the windows shall be single or double hung and operate in a manner that meets the design guidelines, and that the interior roll-up doors or whatever doors are proposed be a minimum of 4 feet from the exterior wall, and that the final selections of windows as well as brick and stone samples be approved prior to purchase and installation.
There is a motion. There's a second by Commissioner Smith. Before we vote, are there any other discussions?
Mr. Meisner, do you approve of that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good.
Very good. All right, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes with 4 concurring votes. Thank you very much. Yes, we've been on for 2.5 hours, and it sounds like the commissioners would like to take a 10-minute break, and we will put that on the clock so that we will know where we're at. Thank you for your patience, because we have 7 more to go.
7 more to go.
Mhm. absolutely. I think IT is going to be ready for us to go. Thank you all for the little break. And we are on 27, number 27. Is that correct? 1014 Bate Avenue.
1014 Bate, that's right.
Yes, thank you, Jenny.
Okay. Next is an application for infill and an outbuilding at 1014 Bate Avenue in Waverly, Belmont. Staff has issued an administrative permit for the demolition of this non-contributing house. This block includes a mix of non-contributing homes that predate the overlay and smaller historic houses. In determining the appropriate massing for infill, MHCC considers the historic context only, not taking into account larger non-contributing structures. The historic context on this block includes modest 1 and 1.5 story houses. The applicant is proposing a full 2-story house with a ridge height of about 34 feet 6 inches, which staff finds too large for the historic context. There are no historic 2-story houses here, and the tallest houses are about 26 feet tall. The proposed form and height would dwarf the neighboring historic modest houses. The width is also a bit too large for the context, particularly when paired with the proposed height. The drawings call for vinyl siding and trim, which the guidelines do not allow. The site plan would meet the guidelines if the proposed massing was appropriate. The applicant is also proposing an outbuilding, which is a full 2 stories. 2-story outbuildings are only appropriate behind 2-story houses, and as staff finds this 2-story primary structure is inappropriate here, a 2-story outbuilding would also be inappropriate. In conclusion, staff recommends disapproval of proposed infill and outbuilding, finding they do not meet the applicable design guidelines. I believe that the applicant is here.
Thank you, Jenny.
There we go.
I'll start.
Yes.
How y'all doing today? My name's Chase Wilson. I'm the owner of the property. We proposed that house. The materials, I understand, we'd definitely work and change those, set they're in conformity to the historic guidelines. That wasn't more of a set in stone as much as it was the design. Across the street from that area is 2 4-corner houses that we are trying to do as well. And then down the street is a townhome complex. So our idea was to try to get into conform and bring back and add historic homes to that street. Right there on that area, there's not as, I don't know if those are right there located at, as far as the historic homes, there's a lot of non-conforming. We feel is that house right there is near a lot of other houses. It's within the guidelines of the lot and it fits the lot. This is a 2-story house. Obviously, the back side would have to be in conformity if the back part would need to match the front if it's approved. But we feel as if that house at least brings back the historic look of a non-conforming house. The neighborhood, Waverly, Belmont, has a lot of 2-story houses in it, as well as the streets on either side of it. There's not historic conforming houses to really compare that to as far as the 1 versus 2 stories. Understand that, but just looking at the neighborhood and the block as a whole, the street as a whole, feels as if the 2-story does fit and it fits the lot and within the guidelines of the lot property. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Open public hearing. Close public hearing. We are looking at Google again. Google, our friend. again, here's the question, as we've seen another project today, is that what does it look like in the historic context? So just a little summary.
It seems pretty similar to our Fatherland Street home. Is the contributing historical context 1 1/2? Is that generally the range?
That's correct. These are typical contributing houses on that block.
And it does appear there are a few newer, maybe the last 15 years, non-contributing two-story. Is that kind of the same principles before that the kind of context got a little tighter?
This overlay is newer, so those larger houses, I don't think that we approved any of those. I think they all predate the overlay in this case.
Gotcha.
It looks to me like, from this standpoint, the staff recommendation is correct. Everything on that side of the block looks to me like it's, modest one or at most 1.5 story. And so it seems to me that the applicant could come back with a 1.5 story that would be able to give them, much more space than what they currently have and an upgrade there. But I have to agree that both the overall height and especially the side elevation of this seems to overwhelm the existing homes that are there in that context. So with respect to 1014 Bate Avenue, I move for disapproval in accordance with staff recommendation.
Vice Chair has made a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Commissioner Cashin. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Hearing no opposition or seeing no hands of opposition, the motion passes with 4 concurring votes. Thank you. Thank you, applicant. Please continue to work with staff.
Sorry. Moving on. Next up is 1311 2nd Avenue North. This is a request for changes to the previously approved site plan at 1311 2nd Avenue North. This project has a very long history that was detailed in your report. I won't review all of that now, but I am happy to answer questions. I know some of you are newer. I think this is maybe the 4th time this project's been before you. It has passed through different staff members on our side, different owners, different architects. So this project has been through a lot. And we are all trying to get on the same page and get caught up. So today we're talking about site plan changes. So this is the site plan that this commission originally approved. 2 historic houses were being joined at the rear by an addition. The vacant lot to the north originally showed a future building and alley accessed parking. About 6 months ago, staff was shown a draft revised site plan. We recommended that the ownership talk to codes and come back to us, but we never revised the approved permit or any changes to the site plan. Staff noted recently that the applicant was constructing a new parking lot to be accessed from 2nd Avenue North, and upon inquiry, it was discovered that a revised site plan had been apparently approved by some metro departments, but not by MHCC. The changes at issue include utility locations, walkways from the historic front doors to the sidewalk at 2nd Avenue, fencing, and the surface parking lot. The HVAC condenser units were added beyond the midpoint, as is typically required. However, the guidelines say that they should be in the rear or side yard, but they were mounted to the wall of the addition. Staff finds that this does not meet the guideline that requires utilities to be located to limit visibility. Staff suggests that these condenser units could be dropped to the ground in this same location to meet the guidelines. The applicant has offered to screen the units in place. Staff typically does not consider screening to be an adequate solution to an otherwise inappropriate location for utilities. 2 metal utility boxes have been installed on site in locations that were not approved by MHCC. This backflow box is in the front yard, in a location where MHCC would typically not approve utilities due to significant visibility. However, these types of backflow boxes have been allowed in similar front yard locations in the past because they need to be here for functionality. This firebox was placed just beyond the front porch. Staff finds that this location is highly visible and blocks visibility of architectural features. Staff recommends a condition that this box be pushed back beyond the windows on this side elevation. The original site plan approved by MHCC showed the retention of the walkway from the frame house to the sidewalk at 2nd Avenue North. As built, no walkways are provided from the front doors to the sidewalk. Staff recommends a condition that walkways from the front porches directly to the sidewalk be provided from both houses. The applicant would also like to construct fencing on top of these new retaining walls. Staff finds that the fencing meets the guidelines, but a break should be provided with gates if desired to allow for a walkway access in front of each house. The applicant is proposing a surface parking lot in the vacant lot to the north of the brick house. Access to the parking lot is proposed to be from 2nd Avenue North. While the guidelines specify that parking should be accessed via the alley, staff finds that street access could be appropriate here as there is a significant drop in grade between the alley and the back of the lot, and there is an existing curb cut to 2nd Avenue dating to at least 2007. Staff recommends that a 3-foot tall wall, fence, or planter box be constructed along the sidewalk on this lot, except for at the location of the driveway. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of the revised site plan with the conditions seen here. I know that the applicant is here and would like to speak, but I'm happy to answer your questions as well. I know it's a lot of information. Yes.
Just clarification on 2. The firebox, there are 2 fireboxes. Is that correct?
So my understanding is this one on the side is a firebox. This one is a backflow.
Okay.
This one, we agree needs to be in this location to function correctly. This one we would like to ask to be pushed back.
Okay, just regarding that. That was my question. Okay, thank you.
We might have more questions. We will listen to the applicant.
Chair Bell, Vice Chair Stewart, members of the Commission, I'm David Kleinfelter, the firm of Reno and Kavanaugh. I'm here with Ashley Stockton, who's one of the members, ownership. Robbie King, who's also a member of ownership, and Mac McDonald, who's a business associate of theirs. Only Ashley and I will be speaking, and I'll be, for me anyway, brief. Not always that brief. And you have materials. They were emailed to you, and we also have given you paper materials with some responses to the five conditions. I'm glad that one's up there still.
So, Mr. Kleinfelter, one question. Is there any difference in what the printouts were versus what the electronic was?
No, I just like to have nicely printed stuff in front of you so you can refer to it easily. Actually, there's a set at the offices of the Historic Zoning Commission, too. They just apparently can't be accessed. So this is a different matter than a lot of what you've been hearing today for a couple reasons. First of all, there's nothing really on the structure. There's not a window issue, a porch, a height. The historic structure is not at issue today, which is good. I think you've been through some of that previously. Also, permits were pulled, maybe not by the original owners. There were definitely some issues, but by the time Robbie and Ashley had it, everything's been pulled appropriately, and there's definitely a building permit. I do think the context is important. I mentioned that in the letter. There's only 2 properties on this frontage, so that context I think is relevant. If you look across the street, it's going to be a modern apartment building. Right now it's an industrial, unless they've started construction, it's an industrial storage lot. So I'm going to start actually with number 2, the firebox, because that is the most important one. That is the most important because the cost is pretty extensive. It's going to be over $100,000 to move that. I want to note that initially note that the site plan that was approved by the Codes Department and reviewed, and all the agencies, including MHCC, signed off on the approval, had this box located up further next to the porch. It's been moved back from that location because that's about as far back as it can be moved from the fire suppression contractor. That little red dot you see on that box, that's where the fire hoses hook up, so location is important. I will note that, and I think, thankfully, staff said correctly here, it doesn't block the window. There was a statement at one point, I think, in your staff report that it blocks the window, and as you can see, from one angle, it looks like it, but it doesn't block the actual window where you can see it. So that site plan was approved, never knew anything of an objection to this until April of 2024. It's also not part of the historic structure, and, again, you have some grayness in this regulation. It's not 2 stories versus 1 story, that kind of thing. So that's number one, and that's definitely the most important. Actually, I was going to joke at the beginning, the longer we stay, we should get higher percentages of relief, I think, right? But so that's number one. Moving on to the HVAC, there is no guideline that says an HVAC unit has to be on the ground. There's a reason for it. Actually, maybe talk for a little bit more. It's for security. It's adhered to the building that way, and it keeps it safe. Plus, it also keeps it out of the pathway of vendors and such who are going to be using the sidewalk that's next to it. There is no guideline. It's in the proper location from front to back. I understand that maybe a new guideline will be presented, but as of now, there's not one that says it must be on the ground. And as we said, we're happy to screen it to prevent it from being seen. On the walkways, can I guess the site plan there was a site plan, I think staff said there's no walkways. I think it's just, I understand what she's saying is that directly from the doors to the street, there's not a walkway. There is a walkway from these buildings to the street. It's just that they join. And I made a statement in the letter, which really wasn't joking, but it's who's to say that people wouldn't have, and these are turn of the century houses, said, hey, let's just build one walkway, and maybe even family members that people would build houses next to each other. So and there's no suggestion that's not historically significant. More importantly, the regulation that applies, 3E to D, requires them to be serviceable, relate to the building in scale, width, placement, and type of material, and all those things, none of those are even contended to be not complied with. So we think the sidewalks, as shown, they do come, you can get out of the buildings onto a sidewalk, you just happen to take a different path instead of going straight to the street, which brings me to number 4, which is the fence issue, but I think the fence issue is obviously driven by the walkway issue. If you do one walkway, then you need one opening. It's also important to note that that walkway from a functionality standpoint is important where it is, because if you saw the new building in the back, it kind of goes into the front. You can go over and in, or you can go straight in. So it does both of those, serves both of those purposes. We'll say that we're fine with the wall issue. There's no, number 5 is not an issue. I think that's all I had. And Ashley will take it from there.
Thank you, Mr. Kleinfelter.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having us today. Like David said, my name is Ashley Stockton, and along with Robbie King, I'm one of the owners of the project. Thanks to staff for going along on this journey that we've been on with this loan, which is the name of the event space that will be operating there. As David mentioned, we are very thankful for the overall staff recommendation for site approval, and we just wanted to kind of talk through a couple of the conditions to approval with our perspective. And so as David mentioned, with HVAC units being dropped to the ground, we've actually had theft on property relative to HVAC 2 times. We had a break-in on the site just this week. If you're familiar with this area, you know that there's a large unhoused population. So that, along with vendors using that sidewalk to connect to what's a catering kitchen over there, this seemed like the best way for us to maintain the asset long term. And we are happy to add a screen. We consulted with Phil Thomason kind of about the use of a screen, and we provided example pictures, but we're happy to provide, if that's approved by you all, what our specific screen would look like for that location. I also want to point out that the picture that staff provided was during construction when we had removed one of the large trees that was at the front of the property line. And as our approved landscape plans show, there are plans to replant on that side with dogwood trees. So that would further kind of block, and I think fits within the 2017 design guidelines of providing a landscape barrier to those mounted HVAC units. Also important and is just kind of looking across the street. So on page 5 of the report that I provided, you'll see some pictures of, I think it's part of the Newhoff development, but it's really disheartening. To me, having spent so much time and energy, and us as owners having put so much money into this project, where you can clearly see that there's a new construction property with an army of HVAC units without any sort of screen. So that feels a little unfair to us. David talked about the firebox, and I just wanted to reiterate kind of that this was on the approved fire plans that Metro reviewed, and it was pushed further to block the side of the porch. We as owners also don't like the viewpoint of this, and we have done a lot throughout construction to work with the subcontractor Corson to try to figure out a different way to move this firebox while still adhering to the fire marshal guidelines. We came to you as a commission, I'm not sure how long ago it was, but within the last year, and had an emergency permit for reconstruction of the foundation. And we also have completely re-tuck pointed and redone the mortar on this brick building. And moving this firebox would make us have to go back and could disturb the foundation, and definitely would disturb the interior of that brick building as well. So it's not an easy feat, and we really wish it would be, because again, we don't care for it either. It was very important to us as owners that it did not block the historic window or the front porch. And the best recommendation that we can think of right now is to paint it a neutral color and add some sort of screen with landscaping around it on 3 sides. Unfortunately, we will not be able to block the fire department's access to that front area. I also put in my report, and Jenny alluded to this, that the backflow box in figure 5 was approved as well. Now onto the walkways. So the walkways were originally, staff originally approved 1 set of stairs from the wood-sided home, and Jenny confirmed that this was oversight on staff's part. We did not know that it was oversight, and we thought that since the commission had approved the new door on the new construction building, that we were able to just have 1 set of stairs that led into everything. All access points of the building from the front, rather. We're really concerned about the amount of concrete with 2 sets of stairs there. If you look where Jenny has this, there's a lot of concrete. There's a lot of concrete in this area of 2nd Avenue. I apologize. David told me I'd go under. So I'm open for questions with that.
Thank you so much.
I do have a question. Ms. Stockton, can you tell me, the stairs now go up between the buildings. Can you tell me what the circulation is on the side as far as people approaching the buildings and using the buildings?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So we have 2 historic front doors, but no apparent way to get, looks like there might be a ramp on one side to get to one, but how do people approach these structures, and how do they enter and exit the structures?
Yes, thanks, Jenny, for showing this site plan. So the idea is that they will access from the city walk through the staircase that goes up to the connecting sidewalk. And then you'll see there that we have created an entrance to both historic front porches. And then the sidewalk down the middle, we call it the breezeway, that directly accesses is the new construction space. To orient you a little bit more, the building on the left will be used as a bridal suite and an office. The building on the right is a ceremony and cocktail room. A building in the back, the new construction, is a ballroom space. So the access to the building will be really dependent on who is using the space and what type of event they're having there.
A question also, what are those pictures? It looks like there's already on the sidewalk, that there's already a sidewalk there. Oh, one back. Jenny, right there to the left. Is that concrete right in front of the porch there? Is that already a sidewalk?
It is, and this was part of our confusion. So as Jenny mentioned, we had been talking to her since December of last year with the proposed site plan, and the feedback that we originally received from staff was that we needed to go to BZA and to Metro Water and submit. And so our engineering team at Benish did just that and received no feedback, and we have at this point received approval from Stormwater. We did not know that there was anything else that we needed to do from the historic side at this point because we had initiated those conversations. And at the point these pictures were taken, that was because I requested an inspection to come on site because we were approaching the finish line of our project.
I also have another question, and I know somebody may ask me, but I was looking at your site plan for the parking lot, and this is just, it may not be our purview, but it's just a question for me. Let me, bear with me here. It happens to be, I'll get the page number, give me just a second. And it's about the permeable parking lot versus there's an area that says it's just black asphalt. So why not permeable on that?
We had the same exact question. So we're being told by our engineering team, I wish they were here right now to help me answer this, but we're being told by our engineering team that there is a requirement for us to have some sort of transition. We're in conversation with them about not having black asphalt. Since this is an event space, the aesthetic is a big part of it. We are also not big fans of black asphalt. We would prefer some sort of gray concrete that is pervious in that, but we can't tell you that that's our plan at this point because we haven't had that approved by them.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Anyone else for the applicant?
I guess one other question. It looks to me as I blow up the HVAC unit on the side of the building, it looks like it's mounted on brackets a far distance away from the space of the building, maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet. Does that sound right?
I think it's more like 12 inches, so probably close to a foot.
So then if you put a screen around it, how far out would that screen have to go?
It would go just probably 6 inches, just enough breathing space, whatever the HVAC engineer would recommend for breathing space there, but we would try to get it as close to. What you don't see in that picture is below, there's a chair railing that we've also added kind of as a asset management tool on our side. As vendors are going through there, we don't want them to bump their heads. And so we would try to keep that chair railing aligned with the screen on the HVAC. But we would like it to be as slimline as possible. That's going to be a high traffic area for us.
One other comment, and as we've seen this building, the right one on the brick, kudos for coming back with the 2 windows in the front, because what we saw the very first, how many ever years ago, was that it was covered. So thank you for doing that and, continuing to keep the preservation aspects of the building.
Thank you so much. We're very proud of this project.
Open public hearing. Close public hearing.
I've got a question. Mr. Kleinfelter said that, that the project was approved by MHCC prior to them putting in the firebox. And so I'd just like to, could you elaborate on that, please?
The firebox location, you mean? We did not review and approve the firebox location. Apparently there was here's the site plan, oops, sorry. This is the site plan that we approved. This is the site plan they are currently trying to get approved. Apparently there was an intermediate site plan. Fire sent me what they had on file, which was different than what we had approved. And that did show a firebox. We did not see that. To the best of my knowledge, again, this project has been going on a very long time. As Pastians, we never revised our permit. So we never officially approved any site plan except for this one where you do not see any fireboxes. So they may believe that it had been officially approved through all the channels, but we never saw it or approved it. So I'm not disputing that they did show it to some people. Fire clearly saw and approved it, but we did not see that site plan.
Commissioner, can we ask David Kleinfelter to answer this question? Okay.
To clarify my statement, the site plan is approved by codes. If you've seen them, a lot of you have, there's a long list of all the departments, and it says approved. And MHDC is one of those departments, and it says approved. I assume that when a site plan is done, it's done as part of, in the preservation permit. I mean, their preservation permit was pulled. One would say, that's not on your preservation permit or something like that. So that's what I mean, and that's what I mean by our understanding was a site plan was approved by the codes department, which, as you know, means more than the codes department, all the agencies that they get check off. So I understand there's probably some communication issue, but that's what I meant.
Thank you. So the firebox was never on any plan, right, Jenny?
We never approved a site plan with the firebox on it.
But they never submitted a plan with a firebox.
More recently, yes, but we have not revised our permit to reflect that site plan. And I hesitate to say I never ever saw one because I've received many emails and revisions from this team. But we did not ever revise our site plan. This site plan in front of you is the one currently that we have approved on this permit. We never approved a different site plan. And this site plan does not show a firebox.
It's interesting how interdepartments are not triggered.
It's because they're different things. Like, we issue a preservation permit, which is separate from a codes permit. So it's the applicant's responsibility to give the same information to all the departments. And it does say on the permit that they should come back to us if anything changes, because of course things change, and we're happy we revise permits all the time, but we didn't get a revision.
Okay.
Until recently.
That's the clarity. Commissioner Mayhall, does that make sense? Yes, there was some questioning about that because it's such a big deal here.
It's a big deal.
To move it or not to move it, and yeah. I just want to make sure we had what we had in front of us. It is interesting that the applicant has said that if you put, and I'm going back to the HVAC units on the side, that if you put a screening and it's 12 inches or so beyond what it is now, and if it's going to be an active sidewalk, would you not bump your head on it? And would you have to have codes approve that into an actual sidewalk that's 36 inches or 40 inches? Cyril, you have any insight on that?
Yeah, for overhead obstructions like that, you need 80 inches. It's 6'8", has to be at least 6'8", so 80 inches above the ground to be legal.
And is that so on this one? We don't know, but that is a question. If it's actually within codes, 6'8" inches. Okay, that's the question. I don't know if the applicant has the answer to that. Again, commissioners, we're asking questions so that we can be clear on how this project is going.
This has been signed off on our building permit, so I think that speaks to code's approval of this section. I don't know if I can share this, but it's a little bit hard to see at this angle how large that sidewalk is, but I actually have security camera footage, and I'm happy to show. It's probably a 5-foot wide sidewalk. It's a very large sidewalk.
And you're saying that that's going to be a service entrance for your people?
It is. So if you look at the site plan, the idea is that the parking from the alley is where service and vendor vehicles will park when there are events. And then they'll be able to walk down the sidewalk. And it connects to on the new construction building, that square that it kind of encroaches on the existing part of the wood frame building. That's the catering kitchen and vendor access point. And so that will be the main point of access for vendors.
One more clarity. On the entrance, where the staff is recommending that you have a sidewalk from each of the doors. So we don't see any pictures where the front of that has access to that middle, like you're going out, keep there. Thank you. Yeah, so you step down off the porch and you go into this common sidewalk, is that correct?
That's correct. There's a sidewalk that runs the entire length.
No, but it comes out of each front door?
That comes out of each front door and connecting through that breezeway entrance. And then to the right of the brick house, it connects, and that is one of our ADA access points into the building, into the parking lot.
Okay. Thank you for the clarity.
Sure. Any more questions?
I think not.
Thank you.
We did close public hearing, right? Just want to make sure, because we're such in discussions right now that just want to make sure. Okay. Right. Well, like any help? Oh no. I pushed the button, but I think I have messed up. Okay, good. Oh, shoot. I would be in trouble with IT.
Is there any period appropriate screening for, I'm thinking of the firebox, that is something staff has recommended in the past? Or any,
I mean, fireboxes aren't really
I guess you
historic
probably
materials,
can't
for
box
sure.
it all
They
the way
were,
off
there was
sense
no,
of its function.
right. Yeah, we don't, I mean, it would be up to the commission if you wanted to allow that, but we don't have a standard for that.
If it helps any, I would say of all of these, the firebox is the least of our concerns. It's not ideal, but, and just for background, you have not allowed for landscaping to be a screening in the past because it's not something that's permanent. It could change at any point. And our concern about the walkways isn't so much circulation and can someone get to the door, but the historic character of this area. So for those, some of the, two of you may remember, when this project was first approved years ago, this type of addition that connects two separate buildings like this is normally not something that would be allowed. But it was allowed at that time because it was stepped back so far and the buildings are fairly close and it's not very visible. So then to have the only set of stairs leading to the non-contributing addition takes away from the orientation of the historic building. So that's really our concern there, is not circulation, but that is, drawing attention more to the historic buildings than to the new construction. And then, of course, the HVAC being up on the wall, I don't believe in 40 years anyone has ever done that or asked for that. So that would be something new that you would be potentially opening a door for.
No easy ones today. You know, I do have to say in comparison with some of the others, we appreciate the efforts that the owners of this building have made to work with the staff over time and to apply for appropriate building permits, even despite lack of getting back in touch with historic when things change. It should have been taken back to historic. And for those of you sort of not familiar with this, on every sheet of the preservation permit, there are big red stamps that says, if anything changes, talk to us, you know. And so it's not like it's not pretty clear out there. But let me take a stab at this and see if this might get us closer. You know, I hear that the fireboxes is not as big an issue with staff. So, you know, one of the things that I have seen happen, I don't particularly like it in this particular context, but I've seen happen, it seems to me, with a lot of these similar boxes that have shown up, there are wraps that you put around those. You know, in libraries, I see books, you know, they look like a big stack of books and different things. I could see that a wrap be put on this box that would be a brick pattern that would help it to blend a little bit more into that facade. I think the argument about the walkways and the amount of concrete, actually it looks to me like if you did the new stairs and that walkway, there'd be less concrete than what they're showing today. And, you know, just going up to those areas. I think if you've got a 5-foot sidewalk for your service entrance, and it looked like there was at least 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet between there and the building, that there should be enough room to move that wall-mounted HVAC to the ground. And maybe you do put a little screen around it for security purposes that would allow, you know, you can have them that give you security, but that allow for the air penetration through there. So I do know security is a problem with these. So with respect to all that, with 1311 2nd Avenue North, I move for approval of the revised site plan with conditions number 1, with condition number 2, that the firebox be wrapped in a method appropriate that is reviewed and approved by the staff, and that walkways and the fence openings be provided as in conditions 3 and 4 and 5 as well.
So basically all of the requirements, right?
Except for the firebox.
Right, addition to,
yeah.
Right. Okay, there's a motion, is there a second? Second, Commissioner Smith, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or hearing any? Seeing, hearing none? 4 concurring votes, that passes. Thank you. Thank you, applicant. We really appreciate all the work that you've done. Please know that.
All right, next up is 1402 Ashwood Avenue. This is an application for an addition, oops, set my pen right in the clicker there. Application for an addition that steps both taller and wider, includes an attached garage, and requires a rear setback determination. The property is a contributing house in the Belmont-Hillsborough Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. The house has a 1.5-story form, but the rear of the side gabled roof pops up on one side, such that on the west elevation, there's a taller 20-foot eave, while the other 3 corners have 10-foot eaves. Several other houses on this block and elsewhere in this neighborhood have a similar condition, and staff believes it to be original. The house has a deep front setback due to the significant grade in the front yard. The applicant is requesting an attached garage, which is typically not permitted by the guidelines. They are also asking for a reduction in the rear setback to 10 feet. Base zoning requires a 20-foot rear setback for primary structures. Staff finds that due to the deep front setback, which limits space in the rear, an attached garage could be appropriate here. Staff also finds that the requested setback reduction could be appropriate as only the 1-story garage extends to 10 feet from the property line, while the taller primary structure maintains that full 20-foot rear setback. Here you can see that 1-story garage. Staff recommends adding a window along that long blank wall. The applicant is also planning to remove 2 windows on the first floor of the historic house. These are beyond the midpoint and behind a projecting bay, so staff finds the removal to be appropriate. However, the plans show lap siding in filling the openings, and this is not something that has been approved in the past. Staff recommends leaving the windows intact or using brick to infill those openings. From the front, you can see how the addition is proposed to be both taller and wider. The design meets the requirements for a taller addition, and it meets the requirements for a wider addition, except that additions cannot be both taller and wider. So staff recommends that the design be revised such that it is not both taller and wider. So they kind of need to pick one or the other. The eave heights on the west elevation seen on the top mimic the eaves of the historic house in this elevation, with the front eave being approximately 10 feet tall and the rear eave stepping higher at about 16 feet. Staff finds this to be consistent with previously approved additions on similar houses. On the east elevation, the eaves of the addition again step taller in the rear. Staff finds that this does not meet the design guidelines on this elevation, as the historic eaves on this side are both 10 feet. The taller rear eaves on both sides of the addition create a full 2 stories on the rear of this 1.5-story house, which staff finds to be inappropriate. Staff recommends that the rear eave on the east elevation be lowered to approximately 10 feet from finished floor so that it is compatible with the historic eaves on this side, and that is consistent with other approvals on similar houses. Here is the rear elevation. The applicant is proposing 11-inch exposure on the primary siding on all elevations of the addition. The guidelines limit siding exposure to 5 inches in this overlay. So staff is recommending that the siding exposure be no more than 5 inches. In conclusion, staff is recommending approval of the proposed addition with the conditions you see here on your screen. I won't read through them, but happy to answer questions. And I believe the applicant is here as well.
Any questions to Jenny? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Joe Kovalik, company's Dream Inc. I'm pretty well asking for the reduction in the back for an attached garage. It's a challenging site. It does back up to the 911 tower. So I would say it's a 40-foot, probably from street level to front porch is probably 40 feet. So the house is pushed all the way to the rear property line. The attached garage with 10 feet is still a bit of a challenge at the 10-foot rear setback, as a bit of a challenge because there's a retaining wall on the back side of the 11-foot right-of-way. So it's still going to be a tough turnaround, but we see no other way to get a garage. Parking is so far down on the street level. We see no other way to get parking up toward the house or near the house. Everything else I think we can live with, whether we fill in window openings with brick, siding. It is a bit of a challenge because you get so many knee walls. You lose a lot of square footage on the second floor, and the house is pushed so far back you can't necessarily see the sides. So wherever you guys decide to put the eave height, it's better higher, but we can live with the rest of it. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Open public hearing. Close public hearing.
Madam Chairman, with respect to 1402 Ashwood Avenue, I move for approval with staff conditions.
There's a motion by Vice Chair Stewart. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Cashin. All in favor of the motion? Hearing or seeing none opposed, that is 4 concurring votes, and that motion passes. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Next up is 1505 Cedar Lane. It's a circa 1930 brick Tudor bungalow that contributes to the historic character of the Belmont Hillsborough Conservation Overlay. The applicant is proposing an addition. Here's the front facade. The addition does extend wider than the historic house, which staff finds could be appropriate since the lot is wide and the wider addition is 1 story and lower in height. Here are the 2 side facades. Overall, staff finds that the foundation, wall, and eave heights, roof form, and fenestration pattern meet the design guidelines. And that connector piece, we're not always okay with those kind of connectors, but this one, because it's inset 4 feet on both sides, we found it to be an appropriate for the addition. The one concern, the big concern, is that the addition's footprint, which is larger than the historic house's footprint. So that does not meet the design guidelines. The existing house has a footprint of approximately 1,484 square feet, and the addition is about 1,950 square feet. So typically, in order to keep the scale of additions, within reason, we say that you get for your addition no more than what the footprint of the house is. So staff is recommending of approval of the project with the following conditions. I won't read them all. The main concern here is that the footprint is too large.
Thank you, Melissa. Applicant? Okay,
I haven't seen them here.
all right, the applicant's not here. Duly noted. Open public hearing.
Thanks for having me here. My name's Paul Hilbert, and I'm the owner occupant at 1503, which facing is to the left. And so I'm a school teacher, writer. I don't know anything about building codes and architecture, but I certainly I've been on Cedar for 20 years and just love the historical nature of it. I love the new historical center, over at Sevier Park. Congratulations on that. And when I first looked at the plans, when I think I emailed you guys about a hearing in May that was on the docket and then off. So we got a notice next door that it was in May, and I was able to go on and see the plans. And so I wasn't sure if the plans had changed from that to this, or how that process worked. But when I saw them, it just looked to me like they were coming to my side on the left, pretty close to the fence, to the property line. And so my concern was have they done a survey? Have they, because my fence may or may not be the property line. So, and I trust you guys to make the right call, but it's now in demo mode there. They've been demoing the inside, and I felt like, this thing has moved forward without the due diligence of particularly that property line. And so I'm, looking forward to new neighbors and want to be a good neighbor through the process, but just want to voice that concern. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Okay, we will close public hearing.
Did you know can you address whether the plans changed since May?
I can. So this applicant sent out notifications for the May meeting, but they submitted their drawings too late past our deadline. So we did not, it was after the agenda had been published, so we couldn't accept their drawings. Since then, I think there's been at least 2, if not 3 rounds of revisions, so they have changed. That's kind of typical, and they should have renoticed for this meeting as well. And it's possible that the drawings that they send out, if they do their notifications early enough, aren't the same drawings that appear in the staff recommendation, just because we've gone, they've incorporated a lot of our comments, so we have worked with them. It's just that they have not yet fixed the footprint, so it has changed. And just commenting on the setback, I don't know if this site plan was based on a survey. We don't require surveys. It's showing that it's meeting at least the 5-foot setback. I think it's about 7 feet from his side property line, and we do field check that when we do our inspections.
Duly noted.
Yeah. Good. So it seems pretty straightforward and I will, for the neighbor, keeping an eye on the property line and doing due diligence, with surveys is something that's important. It's awfully hard to change after it's built. it's a lot easier on the front end. But with respect to 1505 Cedar Lane, I move for approval with staff recommendations.
Vice Chair Stewart's made a motion. Second? Second, Commissioner Smith. All in favor? Seeing, hearing, none opposed, the 4 concurring votes passes the motion. Thank you.
The next case is 1609 Gartland Avenue. The application is to construct new infill and an outbuilding on the vacant lot, 1609 Gartland. The house at 1609 Gartland Avenue is a circa 1950 non-contributing house in the Laughlin Springs East End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. A demolition permit for the house was issued administratively in May of 2024. The immediate historic context is composed of modest 1 to 1 1/2 story houses. The top image in this slide shows 1609 Gartland in the center with non-contributing houses on either side. And then the bottom image in this slide is the contributing context across the street, all 1 1/2 story or 1 to 1 1/2 story houses. The proposed infill meets all base zoning setbacks. The proposed side setbacks and width of the house combined continue the rhythm of spacing for this block face, with the condition that a walkway leading from the entrance to the street is added to the site plan. Staff finds that the project meets the design guidelines for setbacks and orientation. The proposed infill has a 1 1/2 story form with a ridge height, eave height, and width that are compatible with the historic context. With the condition that bases and capitals are added to the proposed porch post, staff finds that the proposed infill meets the design guidelines for materials, roof form, orientation, siding and building type, setbacks, parking and vehicular storage, and the proportion and rhythm of openings. The proposed outbuilding shown on the screen here is located in the rear yard. It's over 20 feet from the rear of the primary dwelling, and it meets the design guidelines for footprint, heights, massing, and siding and setbacks. Staff recommends approval of the proposed infill and outbuilding with these conditions shown on the screen. They're mostly standard conditions. 1 through 3 are, and then 4 and 5 are just those conditions about the bases and capitals being added and the walkway on the site plan. With those conditions, staff finds that the project meets the guidelines.
Thank you, Joseph. Applicant?
This whole time I'd be used to this. Hi, my name is Jamil Wahidi.
Say that again, sorry, just for the record.
Jamil Wahidi.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Staff has been wonderful to work with. We have no objections to the recommendations.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for staying on the whole
We
meeting.
appreciate you bringing in a much more straightforward project. Okay, open public hearing. We close public hearing, and I would assume a motion.
Madam Chairman, with respect to 1609 Gartland Avenue, I move for approval with staff conditions.
Vice Chair's made a motion.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Mayhaw. All in favor? I hear and see none. This motion passes with 4 concurring votes. Thank you.
All right, moving on to 221 Leonard Avenue. This is an application for an addition and partial demolition at 221 Leonard Avenue. This house is a large non-contributing addition. Everything here with a red roof is believed to be original part of the house, including the wall dormer and the side bay bump out on the left side. Part of this existing addition will be removed and part will be reworked to make the design more compatible with the historic house. Here, the yellow and gray are the existing house and the blue is the proposed addition. The addition does not more than double the footprint and it meets all of the base zoning setbacks. On the right side, the existing flat-roofed addition will be reworked into a wall dormer, similar to the historic feature on the other side of the house. The addition will have appropriate insets and be no taller or wider than the historic house. The guidelines allow for attached garages at basement level, and the applicant is proposing that here, tucked in along the left side elevation. There is no alley on this block. Currently, there is a curb cut from Leonard and a driveway along the left side of the house. The applicant is requesting to remove this bump out on the left side of the house because it restricts the width of the driveway. The applicant has concerns about larger vehicles, such as construction and emergency vehicles, being able to access the rear of the property. Based on the 1930s era Sanborn map, staff has determined that this bump out is original. The guidelines do not allow for the removal of original character defining elements, so staff finds that the request does not meet the guidelines and recommends against the selective demolition. The site plan suggests that the fence located on the left side of the driveway, indicated in green, is interior to the property line, indicated in purple. Staff suggests removing or relocating the fence to the property line rather than removing an original portion of the house. Though staff recognizes that in practice this could be difficult due to existing conditions. Staff is also concerned that this column and bracket supporting the swooping front eave equally restrict the driveway width. Staff would not support removing these unique features on the primary front facade of this contributing house. Staff recommends approval of the proposed addition with the condition that the historic side bay not be removed, and then standard conditions with utilities and materials. The applicant is here and wishes to speak, but do you have questions for me first? Okay.
How wide is the driveway?
How wide is the driveway? It's a good and relevant question.
At the point of bump out, let's say. Do you know? I think the applicant.
I bet the applicant probably answer better than me. We'll let them do that. It's about 8.75 at the front, but then it does get wider, yeah.
Where the bump out is. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. We'll probably get some more from the applicant. Okay,
Thank you.
you have the chair.
I'm Ron Ferris, and I'm the architect for the Kelmans, joined this afternoon by Naomi Kelman, who's here. First, thank you for your time. It's been a long afternoon. Also, I'd like to say thank you to Jenny and the entire staff. They've been fantastic to work with. I don't do this often, but it's been a fun process. As Jenny's report indicates, they've landed on staff recommendation for all but this one item. So we'll dive into that. So a brief background. The Kelmans purchased the house in 2021 and have spent the last 3 years living in the house, identifying and refining their program for these improvements. The Kelmans intend to advance into full retirement in this residence and host their friends and many relatives. In short, they're humbled and excited that they get to live in a home customized to their lifestyle in such a fantastic neighborhood. Can we go to image 17, Jenny, please? We'll revisit that bump out. It's the mortgage survey that I've highlighted in blue. That one's fine too. She mentioned the bump out right there in the property line that's on the lower side of that. Original residence built in 1930. That 1990s addition is not in there, but it's hatched on another drawing if we need to refer back to it. Image 21, if we could, which may be, it's my site plan. I think you had that up for. Well, I'll stop right there. Yep, perfect. This gives the best clarity to that bump out. It's in the bottom right segment of it. If you zoom in on those dimensions, the closest point that we're talking about is 7 feet 9 between the bump out and the fence. And it's this proximity to lot 32 and the distance between the bay and the fence that runs along the property line that's causing the problem for the Kelmans accessing the rear of their yard. As I said, at its narrowest, it's 7 feet 9 between the bay and the fence. And in the 3 years of navigating this narrow condition, the Kelmans have come to fully understand how difficult it is. And in short, it requires full attention when driving to the rear of the house. And the narrowness, the Kelmans would say, stops guests from parking in the rear of their property. Some items to consider when we were evaluating this and when you guys are evaluating. When this residence was built in 1930, over 90 years ago, the Model A was the most popular car. It was 5 feet 7 inches wide. So at its narrowness of 79, it allowed a little bit about a foot on each side. Today, there's an image of Kelman's car and the driving up the driveway. Navigating in a normal sedan requires craft and skill and leaves minimal room. Typical sedan averages around 7 feet and with the mirrors open. So the space left to navigate is a little bit less than the width of your hand. It's a challenge and it would discourage anybody from coming to the back of the property. Navigating in a full-size SUV or a mid-size, probably impossible, but I did venture down there and I got through, but it was tight. Left about 1.5 inches to 2 inches on each side. Navigating in a full-size pickup can't be done. Navigating in a emergency vehicle, NES utility truck, tree removal, typical ambulances of today won't fit. So in short, the Kelmans would love to consider eliminating this item and are reducing it. Jenny had mentioned about the post that's in the upper left corner of it. Maybe we go to a front elevation. It's this post that's to the left of that green arrow. It sets in about another additional 8 to 10 inches, depending on where you measure from the narrowest point of this setback. You can get through there much easier if we don't. If we did get that, we would did get the elimination of the bump out, we would consider moving that post in just a little bit more for even more clearance, because again, it's tight right there. Jenny had mentioned removing the fence, and there's a really good, well, this is a great picture. The Kelman's privacy fence sits right on top of the chain link fence that, so they kiss one another or butt one another. Removing that would gain maybe another 2 to 3 inches, maybe a little bit more than that, but it's subtle. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know Naomi would like to speak as well. Naomi?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Naomi Kelman, and along with my husband, I live at 221 Leonard, and thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today, and many thanks also to Jenny. She's been very great communicator, and we've worked very closely with her as we've designed the house. You know, when we chose this house, we chose the neighborhood because of the historic look and feel, and we love the neighborhood, we love living there, and we really have a lot of respect for maintaining and restoring neighborhoods like ours. Our concern is truly really about safety, and our concern is really about livability longer term as it relates to the bump out. You know, I was the one who was fortunate enough to take the picture of the car driving through to show you the picture of the bump out. And funny quick story is I realized once I had driven there to do that, I couldn't open a door to get out to take the picture. And I had to climb over the seats and out the back in order to take that photo for you. And then unfortunately I had to climb back in to drive the car out. So it really relates to, you know, the ability longer term to get an ambulance through should that be needed, to get a utility truck through if that be needed. And that's really our motivation to ask for the reduction of the bump. It's not an aesthetic thing for us. We have no objection to that at all. And in fact, we really believe in the integrity of the design, especially from the front. And Jenny's call out about the swoop, we also think that's very important to maintain as well. So really just asking from a safety perspective longer term, that would be our one ask, and appreciate your support. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cullum. Open public hearing. Close public hearing. Okay. Clarification. So are you gonna keep it? You're just gonna have the bump out? We're talking about the bump out. But you're making it smaller? No?
Is it okay for us to address it?
Yes, please.
The request is to remove it.
Remove it.
We're also open to reducing it. That's amenable to the board as well,
Okay.
or to Jenny.
Good. Thank you for answering. I guess I asked that question because I was looking at the plans and seeing where that is. There's not really an option where you've drawn that.
Even the request is to remove it. Did you say that even after you remove it, you want to reduce it even more with that side post? I thought I heard you say that. No?
Well, we can live with the side post as it is today, if it gets removed.
Board members, could we speak?
Give us a moment. Thank you. I don't know if this is appropriate, but you've considered, Jenny, that you suggested to them to move the fence. Wondering if the neighbor would be amicable to removing the fence.
As I look at this, I think that if we only pick up 3 or 4, even 5 inches by moving the fence, it doesn't really give you sufficient space in there. As you look at this, I mean, I know this house well. It's in my neighborhood, and the roof slopes and the curves, all that are all such defining elements of this house that I think that it would be. I don't think it would compromise the integrity of the house to reduce the depth of this bump out by a foot or two, and to give you the room that you need, but to keep that slope and to keep the tile roof. I think it would keep the same feel of that element that you currently have. And I think that might be a good compromise for there, so.
And I think I heard them say they might do that, but we could confirm it.
Right.
For sure. They're shaking their heads. Okay, any other questions? Because it's a lovely design, just to say, and more compatible to the house, this addition, more historic. So thank you for that.
Sure, I'll do it. So with respect to 221 Leonard Avenue, I move for approval with staff conditions with the modification that the historic side bay may be reduced by up to 2 feet in width, but keeping the general shape.
Motion?
Can we recognize?
Oh, yeah, sure, you can.
Love the direction it's heading. I want to be clear that we'd like to also move the post, not eliminate the curve. We could go back to that picture. If bumping the bay in by 2 feet was fantastic, it's that post and the column that it sets on, we'd love to move that in slightly as well.
Say 12 inches?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's your motion?
So I'll add to that motion, and that the corner post may be relocated up to 12 inches to the north, but that all those changes need to be drawn up and submitted to staff for their review and approval.
Okay, I think that would be number 4. What do you think, Vice Chair?
That'd be number 4. Right.
Okay,
Yeah, good.
That would be number 4. All right, there's the revision to the motion. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Cashin. All in favor of the motion? Okay, Hearing, seeing none, we have 4 concurring votes, and that passes. Thank you again, applicant. We look forward to your new house. Appreciate it.
The last case is 1010 Halcyon Avenue. The house at 1010 Halcyon Avenue was constructed in 1981 and does not contribute to the historic character of the Waverly Belmont Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. Given the house's later date of construction, staff finds that demolition meets the design guidelines. The application is to construct infill and an outbuilding on the lot. As proposed, both the infill and outbuilding meet all base zoning setbacks here. The front setback of the infill is consistent with the front setbacks of the houses to either side. The infill is 1.5 stories with a ridge height of 26 feet 8 inches from highest point of grade. And the applicant submitted a streetscape shown on the bottom of the slide there. And it shows that the height and scale of the proposed new construction is compatible with historic houses on this block face of Halcyon Avenue. Here are the side elevations of the proposal, and this is the rear elevation. Here are the elevations of the proposed outbuilding, and the outbuilding meets all design guidelines. And these are some context images of this block of Halcyon, and then a few more as well. In conclusion, staff recommends approval with all conditions set forth in the staff recommendation, and those are shown on the screen there as well.
Thank you, Joseph. Applicant? Okay, you are in agreement with all the recommendations. Okay, that's duly noted. Open public hearing, closed public hearing.
Madam Chairman, I think this is a straightforward project. It's nice to have one this time. And,
Yes, sir.
I think it'll be a good addition to the neighborhood. With respect to 1010 Halcyon Avenue, I move for approval with the staff conditions.
Okay, Vice Chair has made a motion, seconded by Commissioner Mayhall. All in favor? Hearing, seeing none opposed, that motion passes with 4 concurring votes. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time, Mr. Pond.
And just a reminder, you have officer elections still on the agenda.
Okay, Robin, take lead.
Every 2 years, you vote for a chair and vice chair. Any nominations for either one or both?
I have a comment as well, is that because we have 4 other commissioners that aren't here, that they did not contact Robin or me or anyone else to say that they would be interested in any of these roles.
One specifically said he did not want to be considered.
We shall not name him. Okay, I just wanted to say that because in that way we know that we have some consensus in our commission. So
are you looking for a motion? Okay, I move that Monet stay as chair and that Cyril stay as vice chair.
Second.
Because they do such a good job.
well, we can't vote, can't we? Can we vote? Yeah, we vote. Legal?
Actually, because of the numbers today, I think you actually should divide that up into 2 motions, just because you can't vote for yourself.
We can vote for ourselves.
You as chair.
Not chair, but.
Okay, I revised my motion to nominate Monet Bell as chair of the Historic Zoning Commission.
All right, second? Okay.
All in favor? Second motion.
Thank you.
Nominate Cyril Stewart as vice chair. All in favor?
Aye. So you have
Good.
4 concurring votes.
So
So on both counts, we have 4 concurring votes. So just for thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, staff. Oh my goodness, we've just had a long day.
Okay, I don't want to keep this, will be super short. You had asked, sorry, Chair Bell, sometimes you do receive communications from the public, that happens sometimes. If it does, you could just forward it to staff. But no need to reply. Please don't reply all, especially if it's directed to everyone, just to avoid any ex parte communications. That's it.
Duly
Enjoy your
noted, council. Okay? Cheers, everybody.
You know what? I think we missed David Price's show. I think I had something strange written on my calendar, and I didn't know what it was. Surely he'll play again.
Yeah, I know.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.